As the leader of the Booner Pad, I lead from the front.
All right, boys. Lock in.
It's our core foundation, man. Grit.
I'm fired up. I'm fired the up, boys.
It's bumping right now. It's got my juice pumping, boys.
Welcome, everybody, to Crunch Time.
We're here.
With Jeff, Booner, Lukas, and Gentry. It is Monday, September 16th. I wish I was saying it was a victory Monday, but I would be lying. We're going to break down the Lions' loss. Yes, you heard that correctly. The Lions lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 20-16. We'll be diving into it. We got a special guest today. We're breaking down the game and its entirety. Boys, I mean, yesterday, we had our, by the way, really quickly, I want to acknowledge and thank all the fans who supported our Sunday programming, even though, internet reasons and we take full accountability, didn't go as planned. Thank you guys for, hanging in there with us. Next week will be way better. But
shout out Real American Beer.
Yep, shout out Real American Beer. Obviously, I got the merchandise.
Show the shirt.
Yep.
Hold on.
Yep, you know what? They supported the show, so shout out to them. But fellas, yesterday was tough. It was tough to digest that performance. I will say that. Made a video today. It's on our channel, kind of just venting a little bit, and we'll talk a lot about it today. But they fall to 1-1. We talked about how important, not that it was a must win, but man, it's a tough opponent. They're rematching two playoff teams. They go 1-1. They beat the Rams, lose to the Buccaneers. And I discussed three things today that I think are, I think you could point to and say that is why they lost. There are other things, of course, but three main reasons. And I think, guys, the biggest one to me, you can bring up Dan Campbell and you can bring up the, mistakes he made heading into halftime that essentially the Lions did not get 3 points, which ended up costing them because at the end you would have been able just to kick a field goal and win. Completely understandable. And Dan came out and admitted that at the podium. You can bring up Jared Goff. Jared Goff did not play well. He had 2 interceptions. One of them, yes, J-Mo was held. It should have been a pass interference. The second one essentially ended the game. And he looked off. The offense just looked off. I'm going to be honest, my eyes after the game, thinking to myself, the person I'm most disappointed in, and this is probably because I hold him to such a high standard and a high expectation, is Ben Johnson. That is who I look at personally, because Ben, we know, best offensive coordinator in the league. He's creative. He finds ways to get guys the football. He's done really great things with Jared Goff. Him and Jared have had a great relationship. And I understood, because we talked about this last week, to beat the Buccaneers with the injuries to their secondary, the game was going to be won by Goff's arm. Now, you're going to have to run the ball to get him in better positions to throw the ball. We understand that. But what changed, you have to be able to adapt, and that comes with also being an OC. They didn't have success yesterday, even with the injuries. And Dan talked about that too. The Buccaneers had injuries in their secondary, and they still played pretty well. Amon-Ra bounced back, but he got like 20 targets. J-Mo got like 11 targets. And Goff threw the ball 55 times, 55 pass attempts. And they lost by 4 points. Like, that to me cannot happen under any circumstances whatsoever. If you're down 3 scores, it is perfectly understandable to look at a stat line and be like, okay, this quarterback, or you just can't run the ball at all, like at all. Those 2 reasons are like, okay, I can understand why they put the ball in the air a lot more. What I don't understand is coming out of halftime, when you score the field goal, then you score the touchdown, Buccaneers answer back with a touchdown. Their last 4 possessions, they came up with nothing. The score was 20-16. They came up with nothing. The Buccaneers came up with nothing. And if you're Ben Johnson and you're looking at this, not that I know more offensive football than Ben, but anyone can point this out. And I'm sure he probably realizes this today. Man, Vita Vea went out at halftime. One of the best run defenders in the National Football League, Vita Vea, is out after halftime. You got to think to yourself, well, we're having success running the football, but for some reason, Jared Goff is still dropping back and still putting the football in the air, which if I'm the Buccaneers, I prefer that. Like, you just watched last week, the Rams get absolutely just absolutely destroyed in overtime with David Montgomery. They just ran the ball down and scored running the football. If I'm the Bucs, I'll take that. I'll take Jared Goff just sitting back, and that's not even disrespect to Jared. I'm just being realistic. Would you rather the Lions run all over you with that offensive line, which is undoubtedly the best in the league, or you take your chances with Jared dropping back 55 times? Like, they got 2 turnovers. They'll take their chances. I thought that was abysmal. It was malfeasance, whatever term you want to use. There was no reason Jared should ever drop back 55 times. Absolutely zero, other than you're down a bunch of points or you have like 10 combined rushing yards in the entire game, and you're forced to. So that, from a play caller perspective, cannot happen. That is why I look at Ben. Now, if you want to look at Jared or look at Dan Campbell, I think you can point the blame in a couple directions, guys. But to me, the offensive play calling, I thought the defense played their ass off. Aidan Hutchinson had a hell of a game, which we'll get to. Defense did their job. The offense failed to take that game. And the play calling was too cute. Like the screen passes that never go for any yards. Like that shit is just, it's getting to the point where it's like, all right, we got to just toss that. It never works. The play calling is what I look to. Like Jared's following a script, and I thought the script was, it just didn't work. It just didn't. And I'm sure Dan mentioned Ben wishes he could have some play calls back. He's absolutely right. I thought Ben is something. He's someone that next week you gotta bounce back. We gotta get the offense back into finding its identity, which is run the football, establish play action, be one of the best quarterbacks in play action, and get back to it. Like and it happened in the Rams game too. Remember, guys, we were sitting there screaming on the watch party.
Yeah.
Run the ball. They get to overtime, run the ball. So that's where I look to, fellas, when I look at that performance on Sunday. The offensive play calling is what bit them in the ass late in the game. That's where I went to, at least.
Yeah, and you know what? This is where I'm going to go. This is kind of the first comments I've had since the loss, and I've gotten comments and tweets and people. I already saw people in the chat early on saying, "What's going on with the Booner path?" I just want people to do one thing, because I didn't see anyone do this yesterday. I didn't see anyone take a step back, couple deep breaths, and let's not panic over what happened yesterday, okay? Like, there's a lot of Lions fans, and I don't know if it's this SOL Lions fans crew or if it's still the brand new Lions fans that are on the edge, like, hey, are we there yet? Are we a real team yet? What are we? Take a deep breath a little bit. Like, we're going to have a full show talking and breaking this stuff down. There are a lot of positives of this football game. Like, there were a lot of things you can take away from this football game. Now, there are a lot of negatives. And I'll tell you what, there's going to be 3 people, at least for me, guys, that today I talk about 3 different people throughout the show. Number 1, Ben Johnson, what Jeff just said. Man needs to figure this out. Because Jared Goff in the last 2 seasons, I'll say it later today too, the last 2 seasons, when you started winning football games, has never, and someone can stat check this, has never thrown for 50 or more times in a football game. So there is no reason, when you have the best running back duo in the NFL, the number 1 offensive line in the NFL, there is zero reason on God's green earth that Jared Goff should throw for 50 or more passing attempts. Zero. Like, he has never done it in the last 2 seasons under Ben Johnson. Never. Why are we doing it yesterday? That's one thing with Ben Johnson. That needs to get figured out, and that could never happen again. Number 2, Jared Goff. And I will address Jared Goff later in the show, because you guys know I called him earlier. Hey, he should have an MVP season. He should play great. I'm not the only one. National media was part of it. A lot of people thought Jared Goff was going to be Jared Goff this year. So, yes, the first 2 weeks aren't ideal. Listen, I'm going to say this very, very clear, too, to the people, the SOL people, the people posting about Hendon Hooker, the people talking about Hendon Hooker and talking about how fast – I would hate to be some of your guys' friends. I would hate to be a part of some of your guys' family trees, a part of your guys' lives. How fast are you going to turn on a quarterback 1 in week 2 of an NFL season because he had a tough game? After he just took your fan base and our organization to an NFC championship, to an NFC North division title for the first time since the 90s. How embarrassing is it for some people to go out there and turn their back on a quarterback that has done all of that for you, and you're all chanting his name a month ago? Like, some people should be embarrassed turning their backs on a quarterback and in an organ. It is one of the most embarrassing. Now, listen, later in the show, I will go at Jared Goff. He had a bad football game. But there's a difference between saying, hey, our quarterback had a bad football game, what's going on, than there is to saying, hey, what about the backup quarterback behind him after you just had a 12-win season, went to the NFC Championship game, extended him, and the whole city's chanting his name. Like, let's grow up a little bit here. This is real. This is football. Like, this is a real organization here. This isn't the Lions of the 2010s or the 2000s. This is Lions football that's supposed to be contending for Super Bowls. So that thing, that really dug under my skin, seeing people turn their back so quick. Don't worry. We'll keep receipts, and I'll see people. Now I know who to not turn my back against when it comes to that, because that's absolutely insane. I saw hundreds and hundreds of tweets of people talking about Hendon Hooker, how bad Jared Goff is. It's the most ridiculous thing of all time. And number 3, Dan Campbell. And I love Dan Campbell. You guys know this. Dan Campbell is my white whale of a guest. I want to meet Dan Campbell, sit down, have beers with Dan Campbell. He has complimented and talked about the Kool-Aid chug and the beer, all of that. I'm a Dan Campbell fan. But, again, we got to call spades a spade, right? You have to call it out what it is. Dan Campbell yesterday was Dan Campbell of year 1, year 2 at the end of the day. Like, that's what it was. You mess up at halftime when you should have got a field goal. You throw it. This wasn't the special teams coordinator. Dan, after the game, came out and said, hey, that was on me. We've reenacted this 100 times at practices, gone over different drills and different things to get in that situation and say, hey, we're going to spike it. We're going to do this. And he was like, I put the field goal unit on the field. And I was the one that messed up and had the 20 men on the field. That's on me. That's a rookie mistake. I'm the one that said Dan Campbell's the 3rd best coach in the NFL. That was the 15th, 16th, 17th best coach in the NFL mistake. Like, that was brutal. And at the end of the day, too, if we're going to blame anyone, and I mean anyone for this loss, it's the man at the top of the helm. It's the man at the top of the mountain who, one, if you're not running the ball, Ben Johnson, hey, guess what? Yeah, you trust Ben Johnson, step up. Hey, Dan. Hey, Ben, let's run the ball. Run it down their throats. Something. What are we doing? Step up. Be a leader. You're supposed to be the head coach. I'm glad he's taking one on the cheek after the game. Excuse me. But what are we doing? Step up. You guys see what I'm saying? Like, step up, Dan.
I mean,
I love Dan. And it's just, hold on, Klotzy. And I love Dan. But, like, step up. What are we doing? You're the head coach. You're Dan Campbell. I work my life, and I put it after Dan Campbell. What am I doing if you're not doing your job? All right. With that to be said, though, outside of that, I think literally, and I'm going to say this later in the show, guys, last thing I have with this, I do think this is still a top 3 team in the NFL. And realistically, guys, they are one fix away, and I'll tell the fix later in the show. They're literally one fix away from being the best football team in the NFL. And I'm not exaggerating that. And again, this comes down to Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, and Jared Goff. It's those 3 guys. If they can figure this out, I promise you no one will beat the Detroit Lions. And to me too, I'm not panicked now. You shouldn't be panicked now. And even if they somehow, some way drop against the Arizona Cardinals, there is no panic in my mind. This football team is a real football team. They have all the pieces. They have the coaches. It's about figuring out these small mistakes. And when they do, listen, it might take them 2 weeks too. But when they do, this team is going to be scary. I don't care how they played in September. I don't care how they play in October or November. January and February, Dan, you better have your things straight. All right? Jared, you better be straight. And Ben Johnson, you better run the ball. All right, that's all. Let's get into the show because I want to break everything down. I have a lot of stats for today, graphics and all. I have everything for you. Sorry about that.
I mean, I will say, I know you're not worried about it if they lose. They better get it together.
Yeah, they better, but I'm not worried.
You better win games like the Arizona Cardinals because if you're struggling against a playoff team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and you struggle against not a playoff team, but a team that looks like they could be in the hunt for the playoffs and the Arizona Cardinals back-to-back weeks, it's definitely going to be scary. I honestly think the only coach that does not deserve any blame after yesterday is Aaron Glenn. If you go back and you look at the box score, I mean, it felt like Baker Mayfield probably had like 300 yards again. He He had like 40 yards on the ground, but Baker Mayfield only had 185 yards passing. He had the 34 yards rushing, which it really ended up like killing the team. But everybody on the defensive side of the ball stepped up and made a big impact. And offensively, it just looked like the Lions, even in week 1, they don't have their identity right now. Like the only time you saw the Detroit Lions was in overtime. Through the first 4 quarters against the Los Angeles Rams, you couldn't really tell. Well, the Lions want to establish the run, but they really can't. They want to establish the pass, they really can't. They came out yesterday, threw it 55 times, and didn't even try to attempt to get the run established. And it's so important because when things go wrong, you can run the ball. But when you haven't been able to run the ball, Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't in a rhythm, David Montgomery wasn't in the rhythm, there was nowhere to go because Jared Goff just wasn't having a good day. So I think they need to find their identity, and it's so surprising with this team because I think you can expect that out of the Philadelphia Eagles. They got Kellen Moore, Vic Fangio, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, Saquon Barkley. Like, there's going to be growing pains. The San Francisco 49ers right now, no Christian McCaffrey. Brandon Ayuk's been out all offseason. Trent Williams dealing with injuries, been out all offseason. They're dealing with injuries. The Detroit Lions picked up right where they left off schematically and roster-wise. I understand that you get Jamison Williams instead of Josh Reynolds, but I do not know why this offense is so out of sync. I do think it's concerning. I don't think you should be hitting the red button for the whole rest of the season. But at this point, offensively, I don't know what I'm looking at right now because it's not just Detroit Lions football. It's just not. It's soft. It's trying to be something that you're not. Like last week or on Sunday, it felt like we were watching the Los Angeles Rams offense from week 1. You have the best offensive line. You have the best running back in the NFL. And you guys already said it, Kalijah Kancey, Vita Vea, both out. And you're refusing to run in between the tackles. Instead of running the ball, you're trying to do halfback screens, and you're throwing to David Montgomery in the flats. You're throwing to David Montgomery in the flats before you're willing to run him right in between the tackles. He gets tackled. They tried doing it probably 2 or 3 times in the second half. Nothing happened. So they stayed away from it. But on 3rd and 4th downs, you're running Sam Laporta, and say it's 3rd and 4. You're running Sam Laporta on a 3-yard curl route, and he's getting tackled before the line of scrimmage before the line to gain is even there. Like there's no chemistry with this offense, and that's what this offense has been built on this whole time with Jared Goff.
Then the reality is, dude, like I have defended Ben time after time because I do, and we all still think Ben is amazing. He is schematically, he's always impressive. Like he just is. And he always gets all the love. He's like the golden child, essentially. I mean, he does no wrong. And I think that's how it should be, given the offense has been so good. But here's why I'm hammering him today is because, again, like I said, I hold him to such a high standard. We have to be consistent. If that defense yesterday got torched, what would we be doing today? We'd be going after Aaron Glenn. We'd be ripping Aaron Glenn to shreds. Now Aaron Glenn has this defense playing well. You're damn straight we're going to give that man credit because he deserves it. He's a hell of a coach, and he's getting honestly the most out of the talent he has right now. I mean, Aidan Hutchinson, DJ Reader returned. He made an impact. So we got to keep that same energy for Ben Johnson. If you see a poorly called game, I'm looking at Ben. Like that's obviously Dan Campbell is like he's the CEO, but we don't say that with AG. It's just he's the one that's doing it. He's the one messing up. He's AG. With Ben, Ben, it's you got to be realistic and be like, hey man, you called a bad game. Like he just did.
Yes.
It's I will say, and if you want to bring up the Rams game, they won, so I don't like hammering on it too much because they won in the overtime. But specifically the Bucs game, it is one game. It is a long season, plenty of time, and I do wonder if the Jamison Williams emerging this year with J-Mo's so good. He's played well the first 2 games. He's gotten a lot of targets. He's made the most out of those targets. But I think Ben is trying to balance between having this weapon he's 4.2 speed. He could take the top off. And last year they had Josh Reynolds, so they kind of worked him in when they could. He'd get like 1 or 2 shots a game. Now Josh Reynolds is out. Now J-Mo's here full time. And now I think Ben's like trying to have this battle between last year's offense, which is kind of an intermediate. You have Sam Laporta, Ahmed-Rab. I mean, Ahmed-Rab was like leading the NFL in yards after catch, whatever it was. But those 2 guys, their strengths like the middle of the field. And now you have this wide receiver 2 who's just an absolute, take the top off kind of guy. Like he has to get back to what are we good at? Jared Goff, you get the ball to Ahmed-Rab and Sam Laporta, and J-Mo, he's still going to do his thing. You got to get him targets, but Ben's got to figure this thing out. I trust him to do that. And that's not an excuse, by the way. Like it's on him for not figuring it out already. But that would be my only my thought process is maybe it's going to take a couple games to get this thing ironed out with now JMO emerging. Does not excuse him, but it's worth me mentioning that could potentially be a reason. He still called it a shit game. He did.
And I will say, I'll say this as well when it comes to the offensively. And again, we're going to get into the offense later in the show, and then Jared Goff and all of that. Jared Goff played it bad. You could go back and watch. I watched a little bit of the game. There were times where guys were open, and he's just not making the right reads sometimes. And maybe he's not going fully through his progression, and he's not making the right passes. And that's also things that need to be kind of hammered out there. But at the same time, for a guy like Ben Johnson, we know what he can be. He's done it the last 2 years. We know Ben Johnson is absolutely elite. He can do that. But he needs to also know, you can't you have to know what Jared Goff is. And for the last 2 years, he's been able to do that. But now you have JMO, and it's hey, we can't go away from what Jared Goff is really good at. And we can't just make him do something maybe that he's not. And that's where you have been why are we making Jared Goff throw the ball 55 times? Even if the run game isn't going, give the ball to Gibbs. Give it to D-Mont. Make the run game going. Find a way to get it going. Because Dan said something that stuck with me a little bit. I think it was either today or last night after the game. But he said we were trying to use our pass game to open up the run game. And that's you've never heard that from the Detroit Lions, Ben Johnson, and these guys. It's always been use the run game to open up the pass game because you have the number one offensive line in the NFL.
Yep,
and you need
their identity.
And you need to do that. So it feels a little bit from the sounds of it, maybe they tried to do something the last 2 weeks that they're not, or that's not what they're about, and that hindered their offense a little bit, and that's messed it up. And that's not you can't go away from what you were good at, and you just keep when something's good, sometimes you just don't need to fix things, and that's all it is. And you're trying to do that and throw 55 times versus Todd Bowles and that defense. We've said it all week. Todd Bowles is one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. You can't throw 55 times versus Todd Bowles, even if Antoine Winfield's out. I don't care. They have good back. That's Antoine Winfield and their defense. You have to find a way to beat them, and you're not going to throw 55 times versus them and do that. So, that was where the mistake happened. And, in the Sam Laporta thing, and what's happened with the Sam Laporta thing is I think last year Sam Laporta might have been the second option in his progressions. Typically, they were setting it up that way. Now it might be Amon-Ra, JMO, Sam Laporta. And that's where things are kind of happening here. And it's not that I don't want JMO to get the ball because I've wanted the JMO to get the ball. I'm big on JMO. But it's, hey, we need to still make sure we're all getting involved. And Sam Laporta needs to. Because if you have a third weapon that's an all-pro weapon and you're just not using him, all right, guess what the Cardinals can do this week? We don't need to worry about Sam Laporta because they're not even going to look his way. And that's a problem. And you don't need that. You need to make sure all of these guys are getting looks so the defenses don't know what's going on. And really, are we going on offense here, Jeff? Are we just sticking with offense? Because I do have a stat.
Yeah, bring it up. Keep it going.
Because this is the one thing that I think, if this thing gets fixed, I already teased it at the beginning. There's one thing, if it gets fixed, this Detroit Lions team's just fine. It's the red zone offense.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, you might be like, well, Booner, what? They only had 7, they were in the red zone 7. Listen, there was not one game last year. This is how I know this offense is still extremely elite. There was not one game last year where the Detroit Lions got in the red zone 7 times. Not one. Not one game. And last night they were able to get into the red zone 7 times. Now, 1 for 7 in the red zone is completely, that's unexcusable. There is no question to it. That is unexcusable.
Yeah,
but go ahead, because I have to go ahead. I'm going to follow you. I have to grab my notebook. It's to the right here because I wrote down some red zone stats.
You're good because to your point, and I get Dan's thought process, you're throwing the ball to open up the run game. In this, again, I want to make this very clear because it's Monday. The Lions lost, so we're kind of ranting. But at the end of the day, we say all that to say this: are we hitting the panic button? No. Is Jared Goff? Should you bench Jared? No, absolutely. That's asinine to even to have that benching Jared. That's dumb. Or changing OC? No, hell no. I'm not changing offensive coordinator. It's the day of accountability. That's what we're doing here. We're holding people accountable. Now, I will say this. The red zone point you made, I didn't want to make it because I wanted you to make it because that's something you've been harping on. So I 100% agree with you. I wanted to say, and this is where the positivity comes in. You were in the red zone 7 times. Like,
that's huge.
That is
doesn't get better than that.
That is great. That is not great. That is elite. You had opportunities to score. They just didn't. They just didn't. And if that's, play calling or, whatever, you can blame it. Jared Goff, whatever. There's a couple plays that frustrated me, whatever. It might even have been Jared's first read, so you don't really know the context in that situation. It's just bad. So I will say, Booner, you're absolutely right. The red zone is a great, it's a good takeaway from that.
There's 2 points of that red zone thing too. Number one is showing that you got in the red zone 2 times or 7 times. Last year, the highest you got in the red zone was 6 times in week 15, and you were 6 for 6. And that was it. And then the other times are 2, 3, 4, 5. One thing that shows is their big plays. Like, they didn't have any big plays yesterday. They were consistently in the red zone. But the positive of it is your offense was moving. Like, you had 36 yards or 60 yards it was yesterday on offense. You doubled their offensive production, but you were 1 for 7 in the red zone. Like, let me put this in context for you guys. Last season, the Detroit Lions red zone percentage was 66.67%, and that was second in the NFL. So far through 2 games this year, the Detroit Lions red zone percentage is 27% for 28th in the NFL. Like, it is a drastic drop-off. They are getting to the red zone. They're just not finishing in the red zone, and that's a problem. Like, last year versus Tampa Bay, you were in the red zone 2 times, 0 for 2. That's not good. Like, you have to figure those games out. Like, you guys, have to score in the red zone.
Can I ask you guys this? And then before we get Kory on, I want to ask you guys this. The Josh Reynolds stuff, big red zone guy last year. And I think Josh was a perfect, not that the Lions miss him, but like, I've seen that a lot. I'm just bringing it up to address it. What do you guys make of, like, maybe they do miss Josh Reynolds having like a number, not even a number 2, but like that third guy you can count on in the wide receiver core? Because they're throwing to Montgomery. He caught 4 passes. Jameer had like 7 balls he caught. Like, where are you guys at with the Josh Reynolds stuff, Lukas?
As far as Josh Reynolds go, like, he was a great player and good player in Detroit, not a great player. But I don't think this has anything to do with the loss of Josh Reynolds. If they have Josh Reynolds instead of Jameson Williams as a wide receiver 2 last week, they probably don't win that game against the Los Angeles Rams. Even this week, like, Jameson Williams still had a very good game. I think maybe where Josh Reynolds' losses felt is when we were talking about Jared going through his progressions. But at the end of the day, Jared Goff is a quarterback that has been able to deal with, when he was in LA, Sammy Watkins left him, Brandon Cooks left him, he lost Todd Gurley. Like, he's lost better players. So in the chemistry that he does already have with Amon-Ra St. Brown, with Sam Laporta in year 1, you could see that they were clicking right off the bat. So I don't think there's any excuse really to say, well, Josh Reynolds is gone. Goff, he's just not adapted to that.
Right.
Jared Goff, you just got paid a massive contract. If Josh Reynolds is what is making you look like this right now, then that's an issue. Josh Reynolds, again, great reliable options, but you have 2 great reliable options in the passing game with Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jameson Williams, if anything, should help Jared Goff because what he's doing to the zone schemes, like, they're actually pushing the ball down the field vertically this year. That's something that Jared did not have in his bag last year a lot because he didn't have a weapon to do so. So again, to your guys' point, like, you don't need to be forcing it to Jameson Williams, but having him out there, having that threat out there, especially in the run game. J-Mo again picked up a first down on Sunday with his legs. So there's a lot of things that Jameson Williams is adding to this offense that I don't know if it's either Ben or Jared, but one of those 2 are not adapting to. It's not on the fault of losing Josh Reynolds, though, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I just think, like, Ben Johnson has to find a way to open it up more in the red zone. Like, you have to, like, you can't use the excuse if it's Josh Reynolds. You have no Josh Reynolds because you do have Jameson Williams, who I think's a better playmaker, and like, you still have Sam Laporta. I think the red zone comes down to play calling a little bit, to where we did see, like, there was a one possession there at the end of the game where there was just multiple running back just dump offs and screens in the red zone. When you kind of know a little bit, at least in my mind, like, you could run the ball and then maybe get something in the middle, how you have been the last couple of years, and find a way to get Sam Laporta involved. Amon-Ra, like, those guys involved in the red zone. But, like, there's no way that your red zone offense is 27%, almost last in the NFL after you were second in the NFL last year. Like, I don't think it has anything to do with Josh Reynolds. I think it might just be, hey, we got to figure out the play calling in the red zone, and we need to kind of get in a rhythm because they're getting the ball up to it. Like, you're in the red zone 7 times in the game. Like, your play, everything's fine. It's just once you get inside that 20 and once that field closes down a little bit and the defense closes in a little bit, all right, that's the problem. It's just like the Lions defense last year, how they kept giving up all these bigger plays. And then, hey, when they got in the red zone, the Lions defense was getting stops. They were bend, don't break. And that's like essentially what our offense is allowing defenses to do. And Ben has to figure out a way to kind of to get that done, because you can't be 28th in the NFL in red zone percentage and win a Super Bowl and win football games.
Yeah, the Bucs did what the Lions defense did last year. They didn't stop the run, but they did let the run game get too out of control. And then they just stopped them in the red zone. So that's, but then they ended up running the ball well in the second half, and that's a whole nother thing. We'll discuss this more in depth with our good friend of the program, a man who, I'm excited. I want to get Kory's thoughts. He does a great job, covers the Detroit Pistons and along with that Detroit Lions. 4M Live joining the show today on Monday Night Football. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Kory Woods. Kory, what's going on, brother?
What's the deal? What's the deal, man? How you doing?
Good, Kory. Hey, Kory, I got to start it off because I went on a tangent today and I talked a lot about it this morning, actually. Now we're kind of revisiting it. The game on Sunday, and I'll ask you, this is a good setup question for you, just because I think there's three parts to this blame. Three of the pie little. You look at a pie and it's a blame pie. I think three people get a piece of it: Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, Jared Goff. I think if I had to rank it, Kory, I think I'd go Ben, Jared, then Dan. Where are you at with kind of how the game unfolded and who you'd maybe not point the finger, but who deserves a little more blame than the rest?
I don't think that's a bad order. I think having Ben Johnson at the top is very apropos. I would probably put Goff at the bottom, but I mean, with him and Dan, it's either flexible. At the end of the day, it does fall on the head coach, so I can see why Dan Campbell went ahead and ultimately took blame yesterday and today for how things transpired. But I think really it boils down to the play calling of Ben Johnson. I mean, when you look at this team, they looked out of sync. They looked like they lacked chemistry, and I want to point out something that former NFL coach, former player Herm Edwards said today on ESPN when he was talking about how the Dallas Cowboys looked during their loss to the New Orleans Saints, and it was the lack of a preseason. When you do not have your starters play together in the preseason, and it's not a new offense, but you have Jamison Williams stepping up in a different role. You don't have Josh Reynolds there. That is a big piece with him leaving out there. You have to really get some type of continuity, some type of chemistry, because, again, they did not have that third wide receiver step up in camp, and I have some opinions about that as well. But I think what we just saw yesterday was just a lack of continuity and chemistry. So I think that does fall on the heads of Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson. Can kind of rotate those two, and then Jared Goff, because what they did not do is put the team in the best position to win. And Jared Goff dropping back 55 times is not the best position to win. I'm pretty sure this stat is maybe universal for a lot of quarterbacks, but when Jared Goff drops back at least 49 times, he's 2-8 in his career.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even.
Yeah, that's not good at all. That is tough. Now, hey, Kory, I do want to ask you, just kind of when it comes to the offense, just kind of a little deeper look into it. Obviously, they didn't get to the run game, it felt like, at all. Like, David Montgomery only 11 carries. Do you think that's something that they need to kind of really look in and say, hey, we do need – because I did hear Dan speak. I don't know if it's today or yesterday, but he mentioned that they were trying to open up the run game with the pass game yesterday. And that does not seem like a normal Detroit Lions team. It's usually let's run the ball and open up the pass game. Do you see them kind of going back to that and like, hey, we have to run the ball to be able to kind of win football games?
Yeah, but here's the thing. I think they should have stuck with the run because that was working yesterday. But when you kind of go back and look at some of the box scores of some of these games, the amount of times that they rushed the ball was kind of in line with that. They normally run Montgomery and Gibbs somewhere between 23 to 29 carries. It doesn't really get over that 30 carry limit that much. So the amount of times they ran the ball was pretty consistent. Again, though, you saw a lack of continuity and chemistry in that passing game because the guys, you got guys that have not necessarily played in these roles. Jamison Williams, yeah, he played last year, but this is now an elevated role for him. Josh Reynolds, again, I know some people saying, hey, that shouldn't be that big of a deal with him losing, with him leaving. But you're talking about a guy that has been Jared Goff's one of his most reliable targets since they both got to Detroit. And that guy is left. And there is not a person that stepped up. So now you're kind of like figuring out this offense on the fly in real time because they did not have a preseason, which is why I said they should have probably played maybe a series or two. Because again, if the defending Super Bowl champions are playing their guys for a few series, everybody in the league should be playing their guys for a few series. Why in my opinion, is why you're seeing some of the rest from a lot of teams.
And Kory, I know we're trying to stay at least optimistic after this loss, and I think a good way to do that is focusing on this defense. What did you take away from Aaron Glenn? It felt like Baker Mayfield was carving the Detroit Lions up, but when you look back, he had under 190 passing yards. He had 34 yards on the ground, and then again, they completely shut down the Buccaneers' rushing offense. So when you take away, what do you take away from this Detroit Lions defense yesterday with Aaron Glenn?
I think for 2 straight games, I've seen the defense get out to some slow starts. I mean, they're letting teams move the ball up the field with ease and getting into the red zone. But what you got to do to give Aaron Glenn credit for is that when teams have gotten into the red zone, they've been pretty successful at keeping them out of it. Yesterday was the same thing. I mean, you saw what Baker Mayfield was doing outside of that scramble that he did to get that, those couple of scrambles he did at the end. I mean, their defense adjusted very well in the second half. So you got to go ahead and give them some credit for that. I think Terry Arnold, rookie, got to go ahead and work out some of those kinks. But I mean, yesterday it was a madman. I mean, you almost saw. I was joking with our Dungeon of Doom insider text. Is something that we have at M Live where we talk to some fans that subscribe, and I just said, hey, the way Hutchinson is looking, he might go ahead and get 7 sacks. The way by the end of the game, it wasn't really looking too far fetched. So you got to go ahead and give them some credit for that. But I just like the way that they made those adjustments after halftime.
And another thing, Kory, too, just a little talking more about the game itself, and we'll get to because I do want to pick your brain on the Cardinals game and kind of what you expect. But when you look at at least the secondary, Terron Arnold, they called another PI call on Terron. Do you think that is partially just the adjustment to the NFL, I guess, and physicality because he's playing at Alabama, now you're getting to the NFL, which NFL, how they roll. They favor the offense. So I feel like that's more of an adjustment period. What do you make of the pass interference plays and just Terron Arnold through 2 games now? He's wearing the club too, Kory. He had the club on as well.
Yeah, I think he's going to be fine. I mean, obviously, those are some things that you have. Okay, let me do it like this. Because like this kind of fits into the overall thing. I have like 3 stages of Lions that I'm going with this. You got the question phase, you have the concern phase, and then you got the panic button. I think right now we're in the question phase where you're questioning some of the things that's going on right now. Because again, this is they're 1-1. They started out 1-1 last year, and they lost yesterday's game to a division winner. So I would say right now, just kind of like keep an eye on it, have questions, hope that by say week 4. You kind of see some improvement. Then you go into the bye week. So hopefully by that time they come out the bye week and they play Dallas, you start to see some improvement from them. But right now you're just starting to see some rookie growing pains and him trying to figure out the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, Kory, another thing, last thing here, at least for me, because I do want to, I'm with Jeff. I want to hear what you have to think about kind of the future of this team going into Sunday. But last thing with Jared Goff, I would like to kind of hear your thoughts process because I don't know. I'm sure you're active on social media. I'm sure you've seen on Twitter a lot of people talking about. I've seen Hendon Hooker.
Maybe a certain outlet.
I've seen people talk about Hendon Hooker, and I think it's a little ridiculous and kind of crazy. Like the way I talked about it at the beginning of the show, it's just like let's not turn our back on some people, like a guy like Jared Goff who did what he did to end the season. Like he's still a good quarterback. What are your thoughts on how he played and kind of his future kind of going forward? Like is he going to be able to obviously get out of this, but kind of is it just more so, hey, let's take the weight off Jared Goff, get to the run game? But what are your thoughts on this whole Jared Goff situation?
Back to my stages of Lions. Question, concern, panic. We're in the question phase right now. You got some questions about what's going on, and it kind of ties back to what I said before about their chemistry and the continuity of the offense, trying to figure some things out. But I mean, again, let's look at what happened yesterday. Again, we already talked about them having the lack of preseason that could probably affect some of the chemistry issues. But again, they went against a division winner. Now, I put some stats right here. The Buccaneers Their defense gave up a lot of yards last year. They gave up a lot of yards yesterday. The Lions actually doubled them in total offense. So, I mean, the Buccaneers defense has given up a lot of yards. But there's one, and they were also middle of the pack last year when it comes to takeaways. But the one thing that you got to remember, the Bucs were 6th in the league last year. Their defense, they were 6th in points allowed. They only allowed 19 points per game. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So you're talking about Todd Bowles, a guy that is well regarded around the league as a defensive-minded coach, a defensive guru. That's who they lost to. The Lions, in their past 3 matchups, the Buccaneers and the Lions have had some tough games. And even though sometimes there may not necessarily be some carryover from the last season to the next, it's still kind of hard to lose to the same team 3 times in a row when both teams are very good teams. So I think right now is just that you're hoping to see that Ben Johnson, Dan Campbell put Jared Goff in better positions to win. I think when you saw the way that the game was going yesterday and Jared Goff didn't have it going, and then the running game had it going, you got to stick with that. I mean, they had 139 yards on the ground. Gibbs and Montgomery accounted for 119 of that. They were averaging 5 yards, nearly 5 yards per carry. I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I think right now, again, they did not put Jared Goff in the best position, and they didn't do a good job of establishing the play action, which is his bread and butter. When Goff has that play action going, he's pretty much unstoppable. So I don't think they put him in the best position to win, and I think they're going to correct that heading into Sunday.
And kind of just going off with the Jared Goff thing here, Kory, and I want to get your opinion on this as well. When you look at this offensive line, I still think it's the best offensive line in the NFL, but I do not believe that they are playing like it as of right now. What do you think? Do you think the loss of Jonah Jackson, now adding in Kevin Zeitler, Graham Glasgow starting there full time, what do you think is going on with this offensive line? Because I think even against the Rams, I said it, and I still think it's a fact, through the first 4 quarters of that game, the Los Angeles Rams defensive line was definitely having their way at points. And now in overtime, you saw them flip the switch. But you look at no Kalijah Kancey, Vita Vea left the game yesterday, and Jared Goff, he was obviously uncomfortable. He was under a lot of pressure. I get that Todd Bowles is a great defensive coach, great defensive mind, and he simply outcoached Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell yesterday. But I don't understand how this offensive line is looking the way that it does. What is your opinion on that?
Again, might be some rust, might be some continuity from lack of a preseason. Again, you can't simulate real action. You can't simulate, real-time playing. I mean, I know they do the joint practices, and that, some of the times when they do the joint practices, they have the scrimmage with the other teams, and that's supposed to, mimic an actual game. But it's still, even though they do that, that is still joint practice. It's not, and I'm not trying to go Allen Iverson. It's not a game, but it's joint practice, and you can't simulate. No matter how much you got the speakers blaring at practice or whatnot, you can't simulate playing in front of 40,000 plus people. So I think right now they're just a little bit rusty from actually playing together. Again, I believe they're gonna correct some things. One thing we have not really seen from this unit since they started going ahead and moving up is back-to-back losses. So I believe they're gonna go ahead and correct some mistakes. You got some guys in there that, like I said, they haven't played together. Zeitler, new to the team. Jonah Jackson, I don't like to wish bad on anybody, but when you just see the news that just came out about him today, it might have been a blessing in disguise that they don't have him right now, because boom, now you're wondering how you're going to replace him, but not because he's not on the IR. So they got some stuff they got to work out pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll ask you about the Cardinals game. I mean, I'm going to be honest. This Cardinals team, I thought they'd win between 7 and 8 games. They look good. I mean, they absolutely destroyed the Rams last week, and now they're feeling confident. Rookie Marvin Harrison Jr.'s. I mean, that connection, I have him on my fantasy team. I'm a happy man. But the connection between him and Kyler are starting to come along. Where are you at with just the matchup and the threat the Cardinals pose? Because Kory, Baker, he's making a miss. I mean, Malcolm Rodriguez hit dirt.
Yeah,
and now you got Kyler Murray,
Rodriguez.
who's he's small, but he's quick. What kind of threat you think the Cardinals pose this week to the Lions? By the way, they're on the road, which I do think might be a good thing. Get them out of Ford Field. Get them on the road.
I cannot remember correctly, so I believe I talked this. I can't remember who I told this to, but I had the Cardinals down as a trap game. I had them starting the season 2-0. I had them starting the season 2-0 and then running into the Cardinals as a trap game. Not necessarily saying that the Cardinals was going to be the better team, but just one of those games where, sometimes teams inexplicably lose a game, and I have that as their trap game. You got a guy like Kyler Murray who is able to get outside the pocket and still, throw it on the dart. The Lions have just struggled over the past couple of years with mobile quarterbacks, and now you got a Kyler Murray with a young guy who's just I can't even find the superlative to describe Marvin Harrison Jr. So I mean,
he's different.
And then he's mad different. So now you got him going up against this Lions secondary that has started out slow in 2 games. It could get very interesting. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, Kory, I heard you mention earlier the wide receiver 3 situation, how you were like, I had something about that, kind of talking about that earlier in the season. Tim Patrick, he was out there, and I think he played it. I can't remember the exact snap count. I think it was at least over 30 snaps or around there. And he got a lot of snaps in. Do you think that's going to be a thing where they're like going forward, especially in Arizona, trying to get an X wide receiver out there to spread the field out? Do you think they roll forward with Tim Patrick?
I don't have to even think about that. Dan Campbell just said it verbatim. So that removes all.
Let's go.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, Dan Campbell said today during practice that not during practice, during the media session, that they liked what they saw of Tim Patrick yesterday and how he came in quickly, asserted himself in the offense, and they feel that he has a place here, and they plan to open it up a little bit more and get him more involved. So I mean, I believe Tim Patrick is a guy that has made a name for himself, and could be that third wide out that they've been looking for. I mean, we know they signed DPJ back. They brought in Allen Robinson, and they brought in Tim Patrick, and Tim Patrick was a guy that, just from observing my social media, a guy that a lot of fans wanted to bring here despite his injury concerns. So I mean, I liked what I saw. I liked what I saw out of him. I mean, I know I have no bias, but just seeing what he did, I thought that in the little bit of time he did, he was impressive and probably could step up more and be in this offense. I'm curious to see how they're gonna, if Jared Goff is going to give him a little bit more targets starting next week, to kind of go ahead and establish that third wideout.
And Kory, real quick, can you go through your 3 levels again? It was questioning.
Oh yeah. So you got the question phase, where you're just like, okay, what are you doing? What's going on? You got your concern phase, like, okay, this is not this. I'm not worried, but this is not looking like what I think it should look like. Then you got the panic, like, what the is going on? Those are my 3 phases.
Okay, so
question, concern, panic.
Let's say the Lions go into Arizona. They do not walk out of there with a W, but they hang in there. They don't get steamrolled or anything. Where would your progress along those 3 stages lie after that?
This is a big answer, Kory. Hey,
still question. I'll give you this much.
There we go, Kory. I love that.
Here's where you get to the concern phase. You get to the concern phase if the Lions go into the bye week 1 and 3. That's when you get to the concern phase, because you're like, okay, wait a minute. What's going on here? If they go into in a perfect world, they go into this bye week 3 and 1 based off of the loss. But when you get to that concern phase, if they go into their 1 and 3, because now you're looking like, okay, you're putting yourself in a little bit of a hole that you shouldn't be in, with the division that has Jordan Love out for a couple of weeks. The Minnesota Vikings are out to a 2-0 start, which is
KOC.
Something I didn't expect. And then you got the Bears who are falling down. So it's like, okay, all right, wait a minute. This is not going the way that it should be going. So if they lose on Sunday, it's still at the question phase. But if they go into that bye week 1 and 3, then you drop down to the concern.
Okay, that's fair. Hey, Kory, before we get you out of here, we got 2 questions from the people. Is it cool if I throw them up? 2 questions?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
All right. I got the first one. Ed asks, he says, ask Kory what he needs to see versus Arizona. What do you need to see this week?
I think the Lions need to go with establish more of a balanced attack and really just pay attention to what Goff is doing. I understand yesterday was a situation where they were just trying to go ahead and get a win. But when you're only down really a score, you don't have to really just go so heavy with the pass, and especially if you see the run is working. So I would say just not necessarily get so cute. Don't try to be the smartest person in the room. If you see something is working, keep on attacking it. I think they gave the Buccaneers run defense a little bit too much respect, especially off of the success rate. So I think they need to go ahead and set the tone early and not get out to a slow start, because these slow starts have been what's hurting them. I mean, they really, because of these slow starts, they could very well have easily started this season 0-2.
Yep, agreed. Last question, Big Dan Davis says, Kory, Coach Campbell says Tim Patrick has earned an upgraded role in this offense. Does this mean Patrick becomes the Josh Reynolds of this offense? What do you think? And what do you think of that Josh Reynolds stuff, by the way? Like, they miss Josh. You know, have you heard that a lot? Probably.
I'm gonna say this. First off, we are going into week 3. Week 3.
Yep.
Josh Reynolds is coming off he's playing right now. He's coming off of a career year. He's been one of the most reliable targets in the Lions offense since he's been here. I don't think Tim Patrick, as solid as I think Tim Patrick played in his limited action yesterday, I think that crowning him the new Josh Reynolds would take a season worth of work before you get to that level, or at least 9 weeks of like, okay, this guy is producing, because Josh Reynolds just picked the wrong time to have those drops, to have a worse game. The guy was coming off of a career year. He's been a guy that when the Lions needed somebody to step up over these past 2 seasons, he's been the guy that has done that. Those are some big shoes to fill. And I think that does affect the chemistry in the pass game a lot, because you don't have that guy. Now you're trying to figure out on the fly what this passing attack is going to look like.
Yeah, agreed there. Hey, Kory, we appreciate you guys. Go give Kory a follow at Kory Woods and check his stuff out. MLive.com does a great job. I mean, Kory hit me up. He says, I got some things to get off my chest. I said, this is a platform. Hey,
exactly
you text me, Kory. Open invite.
I just wanted everybody to people hitting me up. I'm like, it's week. It's only been 2 weeks. Calm down. They started out 1-1 last year.
Right.
Relax.
Yep. No, I appreciate you, man. We'll talk to you very soon. And again, just keep up the great work, man.
Appreciate you, Kory.
There you go, Kory. Mr. Kory Woods out here, man. Joining the fellas. And by the way, what Kory said, I did because I'm mad I didn't think of it. That's why I love Kory. He makes me think. And I appreciate guests that do that. I went and actually looked up Goff's record when he throws 50+ pass attempts. Because I was curious. I was like, wow, what a great he got me. Goff is 1-7 when throwing 50+ pass attempts, 11-13 TD to interception ratio. 11-13 and 1-7. So again, not that usually when you're throwing the ball a lot, you're typically down. So I get that. But quarterbacks typically aren't great in that situation anyway. Yeah. Like that's fair.
Any quarterback probably has a bad record, like Kory said. Yesterday, it's a 4-point game. And it was like you were up at points while they're still throwing the ball. Like, and you were like, it was always a one. It was never like a 2 touchdown. Like if you lost by 4 points and you were down 2 or 3 touchdowns and you're throwing 50 times to come back, I would get that. But watching that game yesterday, there was zero reason. It didn't even like the pass. Like I was going through and I tried to find different ways to be like, all right, maybe Goff was better outside the rest. Oh, like there was a possession, guys, where Jared Goff, he was 1 for 6 in a possession for 8 yards. If you're 1 for 6 for 8 yards, Ben Johnson, why are you not trying to find a better way to distribute the ball or get the ball to D-Mount or Gibbs or Laporte? Like, what are we doing? There's another one. The first, not the first one, obviously an interception, but right away, 1 for 4. And the only pass completion is a 50-yard attempt to Jameer or Jamo. So it's like, and I stopped after like the 3rd possession. When I saw 1 for 6 for 8 yards, I was like, all right, there's no point I can get out of this. It's literally just Ben Johnson has to be able to know when to go away. Like it's a 1 possession game the whole time. Run the ball. Like if your passing's not working, I would rather run the ball a million times and be like, we just lost because they beat us up front today when you have the one offensive line than to just pass when it's just not working. And Jared Goff is obviously struggling a bit. Like that's where it kind of bugs me a little bit, to where at some point you have to be able to turn and be like, let's adjust.
And by the way, I saw a question. Jay-Z, should big shout out to him. He says, what's Goff's record with 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40 rush attempts? I think he means pass attempts. I only have 40 plus. I didn't look. I'm sure but he's fine. I mean, if you're doing, he should be fine. 20 to 30 pass attempts, but 40 isn't as bad. It's Goff is 10 of 19 when throwing 40 plus pass attempts. He has a 43 to 31 touchdown interception ratio. So it's obviously better than 11 and 13. So 40 is not as bad. I've seen a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, it's not ideal, but 50 is
it's like Drew Brees in New Orleans.
Yeah, you're throwing the ball.
They were going 7-9.
Yeah,
they were playing as if they didn't have a good defense. That was their game plan. They went in there and they continued to go in there acting like Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans were going to just find a connection and keep clicking. Chris Godwin was going for 100, which he was, but the rest of that offense did absolutely nothing. So even if you had to keep them honest, to Booner's point, if you're going 1 for 6, stop throwing the damn ball. It's obviously not working. That run game, even if they stop you 2 or 3 times, one of those times your offensive line is going to win. Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery are going to start rolling, and that's when this offense gets hot. And they just refused, in my opinion, to try to do that. They were more reliant on going to like Jeff said, going to screen game with Jahmyr Gibbs and handing the ball off to him in between the tackles. They were doing whatever they could to try to widen out that Tampa Bay defense, and it just wasn't working because Todd Bowles probably was just like, okay, they're going to switch up coming out of halftime. He was probably waiting for him to run the ball, establish a run out of half, didn't do it in the first half. And they didn't do it. So Todd Bowles was like, okay, we're just going to keep running the same defense. They're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So it was Zion McCollum. Looked like Antoine Winfield out there last night or yesterday.
Zion McCollum. I didn't. And he was off concussion protocol. So he popped right back off protocol and making some plays. And I know I saw Jay-Z say, no, I mean rush attempts. I don't know that.
That would be interesting to know, to be honest, though, when you're running the ball. Because that was the conversation we had last week after the win, where we had a little argument to where you guys were like, well, maybe you have to win more games this year with the run. And then literally the next week they throw 50 times, which we haven't seen literally in the last 2 seasons. They have never thrown for 50 times. So that was to my point, you still have to get the pass game going. I never in my life would have thought that meant 55 times and just go away from the run completely. You have to have a balance. You have to. And I did see a question too of Sam Laporta. Someone asked, I want to get to it right here. Big Dan Davis just said, why do you guys think Sam Laporta has gotten less targets? I've seen him with less than a handful of targets. I just think it's just, he's been out, and he was out of training camp the whole time until probably the last week of preseason. So that could be something to where he's been out, so he hasn't been involved in practice for a while, but it's still all last year he was involved. I think it's just more so with J-Mo involved, you probably would have hoped that J-Mo, Amon-Ra, and Laporta with Goff had more reps in live action than they did, because they probably – I don't think Sam Laporta played in the joint practices. So these 2 weeks are Sam Laporta's first kind of full live go with Jared Goff and the now new look offense with Jameson Williams. So I just think that they're putting more to J-Mo, and they're going a little bit away from Laporta, which they need to get back to get into Laporta.
Yeah, but we'll get to Hutch in a couple of minutes. I'm going to read this, Steve Lehman. This is exactly what we were talking about last week for Stafford. He had to throw 59 times to get over 300 yards, and they didn't win. So, it's just not ideal for any quarterback to throw that.
You don't have a quarterback like Matthew Stafford to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, he was getting the ball out so quick. I mean, Lloyd, it says, any news on Amon-Ra St. Brown's injury? I think it was just a bruise.
Soft tissue. Yeah. That was literally during the game. I saw when it happened. I was like, it's just his Charlie horse, a contusion. It'll depend. He probably won't practice, and I bet you he's limited practice or no practice for a couple days until it kind of just gets out of there. It's you just have to massage it out, as weird as that sounds, but that's just what it is. When you get a Charlie horse, everyone knows how that is. Luckily, it's not a deep bone bruise or anything. That would be tough.
Yeah, I mean, no Deshaun Watson. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he'll be fine. From there. Yeah, he'll be fine. Well, let's get into Hutch, guys, because Hutch had an absolute monster game, 4.5 sacks. I mean, Boone.
Talk to me. Aidan Hutchinson, baby.
Boone. And you know what, Boone? You were cooking. You were cooking. First, and by the way, I do indulge sometimes. I usually will. I'll keep up with some Detroit, sports takes, but typically I'm, watching national. That's just kind of, and then I'll watch, local. I'll watch some 97.1, listen to some 97.1. I'll keep in touch. I don't know anyone who called it as early as Boone that Aidan Hutchinson would win Defensive Player of the Year. Not contend. Like, Boone put his nuts on the table and said he's winning Defensive Player of the Year. He was plus like over 1,000. He was plus over 1,000.
Oh, dude, I think it might have been like plus 1,600 or something.
And then
1,800.
And then the first game, I'm like, well, Boone, he's kind of cooking. He got a sack, but he was kind of cooking. Dude comes out and has 3 sacks in the first quarter. Like
crazy.
But Boone, I mean, I got to go to you on that. I'll let you cook because it's your take. Defensive Player of the Year, looking kind of good, Boone. I'm not gonna lie, second on odds right now.
Hey, I'm telling you guys, I know it was crazy because last year when we did all of our preseason stuff, I was like, oh, Aidan Hutchinson's going to take that year 2 jump. There was no reason in this world that the Aidan Hutchinson wasn't going to take a jump this year. And I will stand on this right now to today. As of this moment, Monday, September 16th, 9 p.m., Aidan Hutchinson is the best defensive player in the NFL. The best. And there is no question behind it. This man is having an unbelievable start to the season. And yeah, it's only 2 weeks. But through 2 weeks of the NFL season, and I'll pull this up here. Let me add this to the stage here. Through 2 weeks of the NFL stage or the season, this man has been unbelievable. Just look at this. 5.5 sacks, first in the NFL. A PFF 95 PFF pass rush grade, first in the NFL. 17 quarterback pressures, first in the NFL. 9 quarterback hits, first in the NFL. 5 tackles for a loss. Guess what? Let me guess, fellas. First in the NFL. 41.2% pass rush win rate. Guess what that is? First in the NFL. 1 forced fumble on the season. Obviously, we would like more, but 1 in 2 weeks. That's great. And this man right now, guys, has more sacks than 16 or 18, that is, 18 NFL organizations right now.
Jeez.
18 NFL organizations in 2 weeks. Like, that is unbelievable. This guy, and he should have 6 sacks. They took away a half a sack and gave it to Levi. Oh, it is unbelievable what he's doing. There's maybe, obviously the TJ Watt, Micah Parsons of the world that's still that he's playing on that level. But right now, if you say, hey, give me someone for the season, give me Aidan Hutchinson. There's no one right now better than him. It is unbelievable what he's doing. And it's year 3. He's finally taking that jump. We heard it all offseason long that he was going to be a game wrecker. And everyone's like, and we saw it at practice every day when we were there those 6 days. He just looked different. It wasn't like his body type or anything. It was just his motor, the way he was going every day. He just keeps getting better and better and better. And then I don't know if you guys even saw today, Dan Campbell gets asked about Aidan Hutchinson, and they're like, hey, what are your thoughts on kind of what he did? And this man steps up to the stage and says, hey, I would anticipate that he's going to take it up another notch. How high of a notch can you go? You just had 4.5 sacks. So if he can take it up another notch, he is going to be the best defensive player in the NFL. I already think he is, like, as of now, today. And guys, like, this game would have probably been a blowout if it wasn't for Aidan Hutchinson. Like, you look at a game like last year versus the Ravens when you lose like 38-0 or 38, whatever the score was. Aidan Hutchinson, like, prevented that from happening single-handedly. Like, he was getting to the Baker in the first quarter when like 3 times, and then the third and fourth quarter when you like need it. It wasn't like random sacks. You needed a third down stop, or you needed a stop to get off the field. It was Aidan Hutchinson pushing them back. Like, and that's the crazy thing. It's like, this guy was a game wrecker. I talk about it all the time about TJ Watt for years, that TJ Watt was a guy that goes out there and he changes the game for teams, and he single-handedly will win games for your team. That's what Aidan Hutchinson did yesterday. Like, the offense was literally 1 for 7 in the red zone. If they score 1 touchdown, we're looking at Aidan Hutchinson and being like, dude, he single-handedly won that game with 5.5 or 4.5 sacks, like, by himself. Like, there was no one else. Like, everyone played bad except Aidan Hutchinson. So he is. I don't know how he's not first in the league for Defensive Player of the Year. He's the best player in the league, defensive player in the league right now. And like, this right here just shows just how great this guy is. It's unbelievable.
That is, I mean, yeah, you can't really argue the data. Like, this data is like playing Madden. It's like rookie mode, and you're using a defense end. This is kind of ridiculous. Now, what I will say, and I'll ask you, Boone, how do you measure it with backup tackles through first 2 weeks?
Don't care. You play with who's in front of you. That's it. You can't do that because guys around the league, there are guys that are getting sacks around the league versus backup tackles. Like there's injuries.
And I will say, Boone, if he didn't do it, he'd be criticized. So,
for sure. And it's like, hey, like you can only play your hand that's dealt. And there's going to be times where he's going to be going up against the best and he's going to make plays. And he's going to go up against backup tackles because there's always injuries in the NFL. I hate that. I'm sorry. I hate when people say that. Like the man just went out there and did what he needed to do. 4.5 sacks. Come on. What are we doing here? What do you guys think?
No, I mean, he went out there in week 1, he only had 1 sack, but he led the league in pressures that week. And then he comes out, and I'm not the guy that jumps up and down about pressures, but I still think they're important. I still think you should have gotten home more. And I said that. I was like, if you're going out and you go up and you get 2 sacks against this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, I think that's showing like you're right where you want to be. And he went out there, got 4.5 in the first half? I mean, it was insane what he was doing. He looked like a TJ Watt, a Michael Strahan, a JJ Watt type of player. And he's the type of guy that you watch during the season. People have been saying in the chat, he's going to get an interception as well. So there's going to be big games from Aidan Hutchinson, and he needed to have one last night. Keep saying last night, yesterday, and to keep that team in the game. And if he plays like that and the offense is clicking, you're talking about a player that's going to take it from a close game to now the Lions are up 2 possessions because the offense is rolling and they're getting the ball right back because Aidan Hutchinson is making plays. So he was the guy that needed to step up big, and he did. And unfortunately, ironically, the Detroit Lions offense at home did not.
Tough.
Yeah, that was it, dude. I mean, I will, and this is where I'm at, and this is where I'm at with Hutch, and then because I know you got more to get to, Boone. I want to mention this. This is, and I want your thoughts on this. I think Hutch, there is no denying that he is special, and the thing we've talked about all offseason, I'll just speak for myself. He's in that. I would argue top, but he's up there in the second tier. That's what we talked about before the season. He's in that first tier. Like he just is. He's in that tier with those other guys, like the TJ Watts, the Myles Garretts, the Micah Parsons, the insert Max Crosby, another one. Like he's in that tier now. Now where you want to rank him is up to you. I think he's obviously going to clear 15 sacks. He's like 1/3 there already through 2 games. Dude's on pace for like 50 sacks. So he's going to get 15. He's going to be in the race. He will win Defensive Player of the Year at some point. The only thing I think from Hutch that I need to see, again, I'll speak for myself, is when you match up with these premier tackles that Hutch and him are going, like Tristan Wirfs and him didn't match up because Tristan Wirfs was on the other side. So it was kind of, he didn't really get to match up with Tristan. But these top guys like Micah, like Myles Garrett, like TJ Watt, doesn't matter who's in front of them. They're going to work them. They're at least going to win majority or win just as many as that said tackle. I think there'll be times in Hutch is young. He's in his 3rd year, which I'll get to that later about winning defensive player at his age and how extreme that is, and how impressive it would be. But I think the next step, Boone, is when he has these big matchups, to win. Not that he always loses. I'm not trying to insinuate that, but you get what I'm saying. Dominate these backups. I don't care. I'm not going to judge him for that. But when you get against these top tackles, if he starts looking the way he's looking, not 4.5 in a game, but he wins, he's having success, then I can be like, you know what? Damn, this dude, doesn't matter who's in front of him. He's that guy. That's what I would say about TJ Watt. I'm at that point. I don't care who's the tackle. That tackle's got to worry about him, and that's where I think the next step for Hutch. Is that fair? The next step?
No, I do think that's fair. It's obviously the first 2 weeks he's dominated, but again, it's dealt the hand that's given to you. And again, if he does this through a whole 17 games, and honestly, and you know what? You can pull the graphic up now because if we're talking about that, this isn't just a 2-week stretch of football. And I'm sure you guys know who one of these players is. I just want to put up side by side here a little player comparison here of the last 13 games, because I have heard a lot being like, well, has Hutch been able to do that? He has to do it for the whole season. All right. So we go back 13 games. Obviously, it's not a whole full season. Last year, everyone was criticizing Hutch for that 3 or 4 game stretch. He didn't have a sack. He did that. So I stopped right after that. I said, all right, whenever we're criticizing him, let's stop after that. When he probably heard all of it and he wasn't injured anymore and he was a full go, what did he look like from since then all the way to now? And that was 13 games, counting the playoffs. I'm guessing you can guess the guy. Can you guys guess which one's Hutch or no?
This is from the last 13 games?
Yeah. I'll say this. Where are you at? I'll go. You take a guess, Clive. I'm going to say Booner's.
I'm going to guess Hutch has got to be the one on the left, considering.
But Yeah.
Who do you think is on the right? Who do you? And I want to before Jeff. I think you know the player. I think I told you. I can't remember if I did. I think I told you. Klotz, you can guess in the chat. Who do you guys think the player on the right is?
Myles Garrett.
Myles Garrett. All right. Who do the chat? Let's see some chat. Come on, talk to me, chat. Let's hear it.
I would safely say if Boone's putting Hutch on this graphic, he's probably the 15.5 sack guy.
No.
I think he's probably.
Who knows? I don't know.
He's probably the guy who has better stats. I don't know who the other guy is though. We'll see. I know the chat's guessing. I see Lloyd says TJ, Gates says Micah, Max Crosby. Boone. Okay, so comparison, last 13, Boone.
Yes. So the last 13. Aidan Hutchinson is obviously player 1, 15.5 sacks, 86 quarterback pressures, 37 quarterback hits, 18 tackles for a loss, and 3 forced fumbles. The player on the right is the guy that I've hyped up my whole life, saying that he's the best defensive player in the entire NFL. And everyone the last 24 hours has been being like, well, what about TJ Watt? What about TJ Watt? What about TJ Watt? And the guy who is ahead of Aidan Hutchinson in Defensive Player of the Year award right now, that is TJ Watt, player 2. His last 13 games. Only 13 sacks, only 68 quarterback pressures, and only 26 quarterback hits and only 32 tackles for a loss. Aidan Hutchinson over his last 13 games. Guys, TJ Watt, who last year should have won Defensive Player of the Year, and who right now, as I'm speaking, is the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year over Aidan Hutchinson. Those are their stats compared since Aidan Hutchinson started to flip the switch last year when he went on that bad stretch. Aidan Hutchinson has been a better defensive edge all around since, I don't know, what was it, week maybe 13 of last year, week 12 of last year. So if we're talking about Defensive Player of the Year, and Jeff, I get your thing. Maybe it's not there. And I did listen to you guys. What made me think of this graphic is I was listening to you boys on Bleacher Report, and I heard you two talking about, well, TJ Watt. What about TJ Watt? TJ Watt, he still has to go beat TJ Watt out. Look at this, guys. The last 13 games, Aidan Hutchinson has dominated TJ Watt. He has put up better stats, and he has made his presence known, not only in the regular season, but also in the postseason. He had some of these stats in the postseason as well. So that is Aidan Hutchinson, TJ Watt stat comparison over the last 13 games.
I'll even add this, and maybe I'm talking myself into it, but because I still think TJ Watt, I picked him before the season, so I'm kind of, maybe it's partly I'm being stubborn, but I think he'll win it. Hutch, can I argue? Hutch has kind of did it with less. He's kind of done this with less. I mean, if we're being real, like
that Steelers defense
is that fair, Klotz? Is that fair? Is that?
I don't know, because like for example, like Highsmith was out pretty much all of last season if you're counting the last 13 games.
What about Cam Hayward?
Cam Hayward, he was hurt last year too.
Okay.
TJ Watt was even played hurt last year. Like it's one of those things where like I think this is like speaking immensely to what Aidan Hutchinson has done. But I just still think like when you watch TJ Watt, you watch Aidan Hutchinson, they're just at different points in their career. TJ Watt is still in his prime. TJ Watt's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Aidan Hutchinson can absolutely get to that level, but I still think there's just a level that he's going up against that teams, I think, game plan for Aidan Hutchinson. And they're learning how to game plan right now. But TJ Watt, I think, focuses way more attention, especially against the run. And again, this isn't knocking Aidan Hutchinson. This is just, in my opinion, on TJ Watt. The best run setter defensive end in the NFL right now. I just think he has the deepest bag out of pass rush moves, maybe outside of Micah. But what TJ Watt can do, he's just insane still. And I just don't think 2 weeks of Aidan Hutchinson getting off to this type of start is going to derail him yet. Can it eventually? Absolutely. But right now, I'm just not ready to sell the stock on TJ Watt Defensive Player of the Year after last season.
That's where it's like, and this isn't at you, Klotzy, but this is when, like, this is all of sports. This is what I hate about some sports talk where it's like you have to derail him and knock him off his pedestal. No, you don't. If you have a better season than him, I don't care what he did in 2023. I don't care what he did in 2022 or 2019. Aidan Hutchinson's the better player right now, today. Like, I don't care how good he can be and what he's done in the past. Who's playing good now? Like, if a guy has an MVP season in the LeBron thing, like no, I don't care. Like, who had a better year this year? I don't care, like, situation, all that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. And that's not at you. That's like in sports in general, people love to use that analogy and be like, well, like, you still have to get him off of his pedestal of this year, and you still have to, like, longevity and this. Like, no, look at this. And as well, too, we're talking about, Cam Hayward, Klotzy, he was playing last year. He played in all those games that I compared the last 13. He only missed October last year. And Alex Highsmith played in 17 games. So he had his defense. He had his guys. Aidan Hutchinson's been going with AG, a bad secondary, and he finally just got DJ Reader back, and you saw him go get 4.5 sacks with DJ Reader. So, there is a passing of the torch at some time, and I guess you want to see it for a season, but there could be a passing of a torch just by the eye test and being like, no, Aidan Hutchinson's him. He's right. We've talked about it. He is on that level now. He is with Michael Parsons and TJ.
Production will tell you yes, but that's where if you watch TJ Watt this season, we watched him against Atlanta. He had 2 sacks taken away. You watch him against the Broncos yesterday. He's still game wrecking. That's why I get what you're saying.
Did you see Aidan Hutchinson play football?
Yeah. Yes, Booner. I'm you're acting like I'm denying that.
He is on that level now.
I agree. Well, we're agreeing. This is where we disagree. I think TJ Watt is still going to have a TJ Watt type of year where he goes and gets 18, 19 sacks. That doesn't mean Aidan Hutchinson is not as well. But I think after last year, TJ Watt is still going to go on to have a monster year. He's still going to be carrying this Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And Aidan Hutchinson's going to be right up there closing the gap. But I just still think that TJ Watt, even after these 2 weeks, is a better defensive player. I think he's the best defensive player in the NFL, period. Hutch, great 2 weeks. But that still is TJ Watt. TJ Watt is still playing like TJ Watt. So that's
Aidan Hutchinson's now playing like TJ Watt.
Who's he playing like, though? TJ Watt. That's the guy we're comparing him to.
Oh, my gosh. That's unbelievable. That's such a bad. Come on now. Be better. Come on, Klotzy.
But what I'm saying is they say, is he playing like TJ Watt for a reason? And TJ Watt is still looking like TJ Watt. So that's why I'm saying
it doesn't mean no one can catch him.
After 2 weeks of the NFL,
Aidan Hutchinson's having a better season.
So yeah, I'm agreeing with you. 2 weeks though. There's 15 weeks to go, not including the playoffs. So that's what I'm saying. I agree with the take, but I just, as far as Aidan Hutchinson being on that level, but I just still think this is TJ Watt's year to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think it's going to be like that.
It's going to be tough. You got to be wrong.
That's fine. If I'm wrong, I'll be happy to be wrong in the situation. But I just think TJ Watt, he's a monster. So
I agree.
But I just think this is the year for TJ Watt.
People can step up and be better than the greatest. That can happen. It happens all the time.
You're absolutely right about that. And I think you, Klotz, even said we agree. I agree with that. I don't like, and I get that argument. It's like, you're kind of like, well, until he does what I saw this guy do. And here's the thing where I'm at. TJ Watt, it's still in his prime. Hopefully he stays healthy. That's the big thing. If he goes down, Hutch might. If he keeps going, he might just have this thing. He's got to stay healthy, but he's still in his prime, and he's won Defensive Player of the Year a couple of years ago. That's why I'm like, he's still in his prime. If he was 34, I'd be like, Boone, yeah.
We're talking career. Obviously TJ Watt so far.
No, not career.
And I'm not me saying
right
Aidan Hutchinson's up there now. Isn't saying TJ Watt has taken a step down. We have had the conversation a million times. There's tier 1 pass rushers, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. Aidan Hutchinson, to me, going into this year, was at the top of tier 2. And it was, hey, we need to see you. We've heard you taking the step in practice. We need to see it in a football game, and then we can put you tier 1. Through the first 2 weeks, and I even said it after week 1. It wasn't the stats or anything. It was the way we saw him getting after the quarterback and Matthew Stafford. He is tier 1. And that there's no question about it. He has now entered the conversation with TJ Watt, Michael Parsons, and Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, if you want to still put Nick Bosa in there. He's been struggling the last year or so, and you could put Nick Bosa in there. That now is Aidan Hutchinson. There is no more comparing him to Josh Allen Hines. There's no more comparing him to Trey Hendrickson. It is now Aidan Hutchinson with TJ Watt and Michael Parsons.
Trey.
He is there. That is where he is at now. So now when you do that, he is at what is the Chris Collinsworth?
Now here's a guy.
He has entered the room for Defensive Player of the Year. And right now he should be leading the NFL in every single pass rush category.
You know what, Boone? I agree with that. Right now, through 2 games, he's been the best defensive end. I think we all mutually agree. Would you give me this though? For a guy that was in tier 2 collectively, top of tier 2, jumped into tier 1, I think TJ Watt's top of tier 1.
I have been a TJ Watt guy over anyone the last 3 years. I have been on that hill.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking TJ Watt from
No, I
one.
know you're
I'm
not. You're
saying
not.
today in the NFL this season, right now, Aidan Hutchinson is the best defensive player in the NFL. Like, that's just what it is. Overall, if we're talking about maybe the full season, like, obviously you want to see Hutch do it for a full season. But, like, through 2 weeks of the NFL, like, right now, you would be like, who's the MVP through 2 weeks? You would have an answer. Through 2 weeks of the NFL, the best player on the defensive side of the ball in the entire NFL today is Aidan Hutchinson. Now, that could change Sunday. And TJ Watt could go out there and do TJ Watt things.
Right.
But right now, it's Hutch.
But you think so? In this is where we we disagree. Not well, we see it differently. You think for the rest of the season he will stay at that point? I mean, it was your prediction, actually. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, 100%. He's going to win Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
I figured he was going to make this jump. I mean, knock on wood, but like he did. It was injured last season, and that was when he went through that bad stretch of football a little bit when he got the knee to the helmet to the leg, like Amon-Ra did. So he struggled a little bit. But even to me, it's like he stayed healthy last year and played in almost every game. If he does that again this year, which you would think he does, he's going to be in that conversation, and he's going to probably lead the NFL in sacks. Like that was one of my other takes, is he leads the NFL in sacks. Like
hell of a start. Start. I mean,
yeah.
Well, if he does win Defensive Player of the Year, I put this on our on my social media, and you guys can check it out. And I just, I wanted to look up because the whole Defensive Player of the thing. Now he's second amongst many sports books. Here's the graphic: youngest NFL Defensive Player of the Year winner. Players to win the award 25 or under. Highlighted is the age they won the award. 22. I forgot Luke Kuechly won it at 22, which is wild. 22 years old. He was with Lawrence Taylor. Only two to win it. Youngest at 22 years old. At 23 years old, J.J. Watt and Lawrence Taylor again won it, which is wild. And then at 24, good old Cortez Kennedy and Jack Lambert won it at 24. And then at 25, Nick Bosa, who I did forget to mention. He's in tier 1, too. I did forget to mention him. Khalil Mack, when he was in Chicago, J.J. Watt, Ray Lewis, Kenny Easley, and Lester Hayes. So if Aidan wins it, he just turned 24. He'd be tied for the third youngest to ever win the award. So that is where, I guess that's where we go separate ways. I think we all agree Hutch is getting there. I think the timeline is different. And and it doesn't disregard his play. Like, he's playing exactly how Booner's describing. But I think winning the award, I'm locked into next year. Like, he's hitting his prime. TJ's already there. We're waiting for TJ to fall off. Like, Hutch, we're watching rise in front of us. Like, he's only going to get better. But it's crazy. He'd be the third youngest tied to ever win. That's hey, if he does this, Boone, that's like Hall of Fame trajectory. By the way,
all of those guys are Hall of Famers. I'll have to check if Cortez Kennedy is, but I'm almost positive he is as well. I mean, if you get a Defensive Player of the Year, that's pretty much like only Hall of Famers can say that. Like, all pro Defensive Player of the Years, like, that's how you get yourself started to get a Hall of Fame type of ballot.
Dude's an all pro. Hutch, if he does not win Defensive Player of the Year, he will have an all pro. Like, he might get both. I mean, and Boone might be right. But he's ridiculous. I thought the defense guys as a whole was just impressive. I mean, and that's the thing I want to give credit to. I know the day, and this is what I didn't want to happen. I know we're roughly hour and 23 in. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. But I didn't want to disregard how well the defense played and how well of a game Aaron Glenn did call. Like, I know Taron Arnold, the first drive, had that big PI, and they and Aidan saved him with a forced fumble, and they recovered it. But Aaron Glenn, dude, like, this defense, I mean, when you look at how they've been playing, I mean, and you mentioned it, Klotz, in your opening take, Baker had like a $189. Like, I know he it's like you would have thought he threw for a lot more yards. Defense, I mean, they've been really good. And then the game plan against Stafford, like, he had 50 whatever pass attempts, but they still found a way to be efficient in the red zone. They picked them off. Some would say it's because their jerseys were the same color as the end zone, but they picked them off. The defense looked very good, and they have a rookie corner. And they didn't even have DJ Reader. They just got him, and look at how Hutch looked. Like, and he only played like 30 plays. Guys, I thought the defense is something we should all be excited to cover, and all Lions fans should be excited to watch. This defense is starting to come together, and Taron Arnold is only going to get better. Oh, and by the way, they don't even have Ife Melifonwu yet. And let me remind you how well he played to end the year last year. Like, that dude's a good player too, and they're getting him back. So think about who's coming. Marcus Davenport didn't play. He looked pretty good in week 1. So they still are kind of gelling and figuring it out. The secondary's still kind of figuring out how to have this cohesiveness and play together. But boys, what a start for the defense, man. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that and give Aaron Glenn credit today. I know we talked a lot about who's to blame, but the positive, that fucking defense. Amazing.
Yeah, it's finally like Aaron Glenn has some tools to cook with, and he's holding a NFC team that's probably going to be a top 4 seed in the playoffs to 20 points. And you look at how that defense did just completely overwhelm Baker Mayfield, especially with Aidan Hutchinson, Brian Branch having an interception. Outside of Chris Godwin, there was no Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, and that's how you beat these type of teams. Normally, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are going off, just like how Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra both had very good games yesterday. So if this defense is able to step up, I mean, just look at the difference from last year to this year, especially in the playoff games. Like Mike Evans was neutralized this year. Terrion Arnold only getting better. I loved how he was going out there. He was clubbed up, and that's going to help him not get PI calls. So that's kind of an advantage with him clubbed up there. Obviously, he's not going to be getting interceptions, but you'll limit the holding calls. You look even guys like Derek Barnes, like on that last offensive drive with Baker Mayfield, it was 3rd and 6, whatever it was. They do the play action, but Derek Barnes stays disciplined, and he swats on the slant that they're trying to get Mike Evans to ice the game. That then gives the Lions offense another chance to get the ball down the field in good field position, and they can't do it because of poor clock management. So when you just look at this defense as a whole, it's giving you an opportunity to win instead of an opportunity to kind of hold the game off. So this defense is going to be creating plays. That's why watching this offense and with how Ben Johnson was calling yesterday, it was so frustrating because they were playing from behind, but they're only behind by a touchdown. They weren't down by 2 scores, 3 scores. They have to help this defense out more when it's playing this type of way, especially when Aaron Glenn has been getting all the heat that he has lately, because in my opinion, he's been doing an excellent job with this defense. I know people were concerned last week against the Rams, and that was kind of like week 1, you shake off the rust. Week 2, this defense came out ready to play, and they showed it. And I think there were more physical defense between the two, but the offense is just where it was different. I think play calling just schemed away what the Lions were doing defensively.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, guys, the Lions defense holding teams to 21 points a game in the first 2. I just want to look real quick. Last year, like that would have been top 10 in the NFL. And I know it's only 2 weeks, so it's a small sample size. But if you hold a team to 20 points, 21 points in a game, like that's good, especially if you're projected to have a top 5 offense and score 28 points per game, 29 points per game. You should be able to win almost every game. So, like, I think AG deserves a lot of credit. Dan said it too in the post press conference, and he said it today. Like what AG has done, and obviously you do have that secondary. It's going to have some road bumps because you have a rookie corner and you have Carlton Davis, who, you know, it's a new team, a new system, and everything's kind of new to him. So you're going to have those bumps. But like we saw last night, guys, like this is actually one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. Like they didn't even have Marcus Davenport. And I know there's some injuries on the offensive line, but like I would take this defensive line up against any O-line in the NFL and think that they're going to go out there and you're expecting them to dominate, not only in the pass rush, but also in the run game. And it's one of the best run defenses in the NFL. And you have those linebackers with Anzo and Jack Campbell, and then Derek Barnes has been really good, and Rodrigo stepped up, Brian Branch and Kirby. Like, guys, like this is a legit defense. And if this offense can get this thing going, that's why I said this team is literally one simple fix of figuring it out in the red zone and figuring out how to finish in the red zone away from being probably the best team in all of football, because you have a good defense now. And you have a potential best offense in the NFL. And then your special teams is really good as well. So, like, you have all 3 phases at the highest level. So I love the defense. And, like, DJ Reader, the first sack Aidan Hutchinson had, I went back and watched it. I don't know if DJ Reader was in for the other 4, but the very first one he had, when I watched it, DJ Reader's getting double teamed, and you have Hutch one-on-one. And Hutch just goes and makes a play. Like that right there, instantly, You're like, there's impact. I think DJ Reader, I can't remember the exact amount. I think it might have been like 24 snaps or 25 snaps he played. Like it was not significant at all. He like barely played. It might have even been less than that. So like he didn't really get in a lot, and he was just kind of rotating in. But like just went like, at least one of those sacks that DJ Reader's getting double team and Hutch is one-on-one. If that happens once a game with DJ Reader and Hutch gets 1 sack, that's big time. And that's not like elite. I don't know how I haven't talked about him yet. Levi O. He's been one of the best players on defense in general. As crazy as that is.
Hey, I'll say this, and I hate saying this. I do. But he's looked better than Lee McNeil.
He has.
Every sack, he is right there.
He's like better than Lee McNeil.
He's
One of
been
those sacks, he was right there with Hutch. Like he was right there.
Like 3 of them.
Yeah, because he had half a sack, but he could have had a sack and a half.
They probably could have called 3 of those sacks a half with Levi, because Levi was constantly getting to Baker.
I hate saying that, and I will bring up, like, now that we got the positive, at least some of the guys like Lee McNeil. I don't know what's going on. Like I don't. And I brought up the interior offensive line, and I know the shout out to JT Olson, Bucks fan watches. He would even agree. Like the interior offensive line was a little concerning for the Buccaneers, and I know DJ Reader and Aleem kind of pushed the pocket, and Hutch cleaned up some plays, which honestly might be something new for Hutch because he's actually cleaning up plays. It doesn't have to. It's not like all on Hutch to make something happen. Like he's kind of getting a chance to just, hey, Baker runs through, just get him down, but Lee McNeil, from what I've seen, I don't know. Maybe I missed some. I don't feel like I've gotten exactly what I expected.
I'll watch. Disappointing.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I did go back and watch some of Lee McNeil's still dominating. He's just not getting the stats with
dominating though. Dominating.
Dude, I saw a couple plays where Lee McNeil just opens everything up. Like just push. He's getting double teamed sometimes as well. I saw a couple plays where he got double teamed and he blew the 2 guys up. Pause, but he absolutely blew him up. And Hutch is like, I do think there's a sense to where maybe we were thinking Aleem was going to have this bigger role because DJ Reader and Hutch, but more so it's like he is also going to open up things for guys like Levi and Hutch, if that makes sense. Because I did go back and watch some of it, and that was something I was watching the D line. Even if you watch some of Hutch's sacks, like Aleem is in there, like Aleem's blowing the offensive line up, and then it's just Hutch is there or Levi's there.
And even no, go on.
He did miss a big tackle.
I think like that's what you've seen out of Aleem. Like he's been in the area like to make plays, and there's games where he is clicking and he gets hot for a game. But I think Aleem McNeil, for him to go out there and get a bag, especially if Levi Onwuzurike is playing the way that he is, you have DJ Reader there, who I know is not a long-term option, but if he comes back for another year, then Aidan Hutchinson. Like, I think Aleem McNeil, he has to start actually making some of these plays if he wants to get the bag that he does, if he wants to stay in Detroit for a long time. I would love to have Aleem around, but those are you talking about guys that you have to have in Detroit in order to keep winning a Super Bowl, and you don't. And I'm not saying that as of right now, it's only been 2 weeks of the season, but Aleem McNeil, in order for him to kind of be that piece that's needed in Detroit when you have Levi Onwuzurike right next to him, who's starting to turn the page of his career, you got to start actually making plays, in my opinion, especially when DJ Reader comes back. If he's not getting to the quarterback and putting up production to go with it, it's kind of hard to argue that because Aleem McNeil is a guy that he's not putting up monster numbers, but the way that he plays, he should be putting up production because he does have the ability to rush the quarterback. He's great against the run, but he's called Slim McNeil now because he lost weight to be a pass rusher as well. So I do think at some point he has to start making plays.
And maybe it's a good thing. Maybe that means we don't have to pay him as much.
That's true too. That's true too. I want a bully in there, a guy that is just game wrecking the inside with Hutch.
Yeah, and then like
a defensive edge on the other side of him.
I agree with you, Klotz. Like he's not in the DJ Reader category where like DJ could have like a tackle, but you're like he kind of is, but DJ's like you're not measuring DJ on stats at all. Aleem, like, of course you're going to look. We brought a biggest stat we brought up was like he had this many sacks last year in this many games. He's great against the run, like. So I think he'll catch on and start to get back to what we think. But first 2 games, not quite. I mean, I even see this comment too. Nobody wants to talk about Jack for 2 weeks now. I'm okay with it, but he's struggling in the captain role. I thought Jack was all right. I mean,
Jack Campbell?
Yeah, and I'm not saying I don't want to make this like a trash Jack segment, but I'll even admit.
Wait a second.
Hey,
Jack's not playing bad.
But I'll admit. He ain't better than Anzalone, and he ain't going to be.
No, but to Klotz's
I've
point,
already. Maybe it's too early, Klotz, but I'm giving you this.
No, listen to Klotz's point, and this is where I do agree with. Like Anzo is better than Jack. We're just expecting a big jump. We heard the game plan in week 1. Get everyone to flood the ball to Anzo. That was why AG came out. And Jeff, I'm disappointed in you a little bit for talking about that comment and giving it any sort of airtime, because AG literally said we wanted the tackles to go to Anzo. Jack did his job. Jack has been good these 2 weeks. I don't know where the disappointment of Jack Campbell has been fine. He didn't miss any. Find me couple plays where he's missed any tackles. He has made tackles. He's blown plays up. Anzo went down for a little bit yesterday, and you see it in the chat here, and he stepped up. Like, come on, man. I mean, Jack Campbell's playing good football. Jeff.
No.
Don't entertain dumb comments.
It's not I don't think it's like a dumb comment. Like I'm not saying Jack is like struggling.
He's not.
But Jack's allowed almost 100 passer rating when targeted. Like he's not. I will say he's not the coverage guy that I thought he'd be this early. Maybe next year. 2
weeks in, learning and getting back into things in the NFL.
Yeah,
he didn't have to cover last year in the NFL.
Probably what it is. But I'll say at this point, Anzalone, and you would agree. I'm not saying you don't, but to Klotz's credit.
Yeah,
dude's been like I don't think this will change. I don't think Anzalone's gonna fall. Klotz, hey, Anzalone is that dude. Jack is just struggling in pass coverage, and
that's it. But he has not been that
tackling. He's Jack. I mean, dude's a tackling machine.
He is flying around the field. That is unbelievable that people think that.
But
I would love
we all
to hear more.
that out of Jack coming into the season, though. Like we all said, like it's going to take a little time for it to click, and that was my whole point with Anzo, is just because there's no like clicking with Anzo. Anzo clicked like probably 2.5 seasons ago. Like he was in New Orleans, wasn't playing all that lot, was playing behind Demario Davis, so that's why I think Anzo, he is a little bit older. But linebackers, they still play good into their mid-30s, and he's a guy that's in his early 30s and didn't play that much in his 20s. So there's still a lot of game to be played for Anzo, and I just think he's one of those guys that sees the field well, and Jack Campbell is going to be learning from Anzo, who has a very similar play style. Campbell obviously has the bigger ceiling, but Campbell I think is going to be just fine and has been just fine. I don't think he's been elite, but he's definitely been holding his own way to the defense. I think if you're going to point to guys that have been letting this defense down, which I don't really think there's been that many, we just talked about how good this defense has been playing. I don't think Jack Campbell's a guy that you're pointing the finger at. I just think when you have a guy like Anzalone who's setting the tone and flying around, it's just like you can see, okay, Jack Campbell is not at that level yet. That's all it is.
Yeah, like his tackling, and I think his tackling is fine. Like, that's what I mean. Like, I think he could tackle, and he can do things. I just think, and we all think he'll get there. I think I was just a little too, like, I expected it probably earlier than it'll come. That's all I'm saying. I'm not
You're
like
watching Fred Warner against the Vikings, and you're like, damn.
Yeah.
Fred Warner is just a maniac, man.
Yeah, and then Anzalone, I think this year it's going to be Anzo, and then Jack's going to you'll see Jack get better and better, and then next year you'll see, like Klotz was kind of calling, I was a year early. He'll get to that. All right, but he'll be fine. I'm not worried about Jack or anything like that.
I was just shocked when I heard you pulled the comment up and I heard Jack. I was like, Jack who? What's going on here with Jack? Yeah, I was like Jack Fox. Like I've not heard any criticism, and watching the game, there wasn't anything where I was like, oh my gosh, Jack Campbell's bad. Like he is maybe in coverage a little bit, and that's why some of these short passes are getting through in the middle. Maybe it's Jack Campbell. I don't know. Maybe I can go back and watch, but I don't know if there's. Maybe he's struggling, but I don't know. The weak link of the defense is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, no, I don't think that by any means.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, okay. By the way, I'll say it again. Everyone in the chat, no timing anybody out, please. All right, no doing that. If you argue with the man all you want, no timing anyone out unless it's a bot. B-O-T, bot. Bots, like Sam Flannel.
Bots!
People out. Just try to like mute them or something. Please do not time a viewer out. That is all we please. We're trying to grow this channel and viewers. All right, we can't have viewers getting timed out.
Who got timed out?
Yeah. But anyway, I love you, Shift. It is what it is. But let's move on here because it's almost 9:40. And I want to get to more of the NFC North, what happened over the weekend, because the Vikings are 2-0, fellas, and I don't know how or what. And it's not like they played they beat the Giants. I mean, they just beat the fucking 49ers. Like, I mean, they just took down the 49ers. Now, if you want to say Kevin O'Connell's an absolute wizard, that's fair. Now, I think it's that. And I also think Sam Darnold's playing some good football right now. He just is. And they have Brian Flores, who's a great DC. I don't think it's going to last. But NFC North, man, Vikings look bad. And the Packers won with Malik Willis. What do you guys think about how this is going here? All right, not that I'm worried they're going to lose the division, but I'm a little surprised, man. Packers beat your Colts with Malik Willis, Klotz.
Oh,
You got to answer
no.
that. You got to
You
answer
have to
that.
answer. If I have to answer, you have to answer.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was we'll start with the Colts. That was painful. That was pathetic. I literally have nothing to say. That was just inexcusable on my Colts. So that was just brutal to watch. But let's not talk about your Jacksonville Jaguars either, fellas. Don't bring those boys up against Deshaun Watson either. 18-3 at home is pathetic in my opinion.
Well, we didn't have Jacksonville winning the AFC South though. That wasn't
you guys, we were going at the Colts.
You had the Colts winning you had the Colts winning. We at least are with the Texans.
Which side were you flipping flopping on?
I said the Jags finished second. But I have the Texans finishing first. Who do you have finishing first?
That was my original take. I stuck with it, and I had to hear the Jacksonville Jaguars will make the playoff over the Colts, and I was like, no way, no how. And either way, but looking at the NFC North right now, I agree with you, Jeff, that the Vikings are not going to be able to keep this up and be the number one seed in the NFC North. But I think there's a very real shot that they're going to be able to make in the playoffs. I mean, they were right outside with Kirk Cousins, who's hurt now. And then they were rolling with the Josh Dobbs and Nick Mullins show. And I think why Sam Darnold had this offense looking different is because it's the same thing with Jared Goff. Kirk Cousins is a traffic cone. He cannot move. He cannot create extra plays with this offense. When you look at Josh Dobbs, why they were creating plays down the field is because he's mobile. He creates other elements. When you look at Aaron Jones, I think he was a very underrated piece because he can catch the ball in the backfield. They have a lot of weapons, and they're going to probably have a top half of the league defense with Brian Flores, the way he's cooking, because they don't have anywhere that's a game wrecker, but they're solid at all three phases. And I think they're a team that just right now is clicking. Kevin O'Connell, I think he's right on that Shane Steichen type of level where it's just you give him a quarterback and he's going to be able to play. You give him a top 10 type of quarterback level. Again, Sam Darnold's not a top 10 quarterback, but right now he's playing like it. And I think you look at that consistently over what he's done in Minnesota and just throughout his career. He's never had bad quarterback play. So when you have good quarterback play and you have a solid defense, you're going to be winning games. And I think that with San Francisco kind of shaking off the rust, kind of like similar to Detroit is, that's a team that Minnesota at home, one of the more underrated home field advantages in the league, that you can go in there sleeping, you're going to get smacked around. That's why I just think when we talk about the Vikings, that's a game that if you go in there sleeping in the Lions, they have so many weapons that can kill you. They don't even have TJ Hawkinson back yet. They're going to be a really tough matchup for any team, period, just because of weapons that they have. I mean, Justin Jefferson's going to cause a problem for any NFL defense.
Yeah, I mean, he's and he hasn't been like, Justin Jefferson hasn't been like Justin Jefferson, like, he had, what do you have like last week? What do you have this week? Like 50, 60 yards or something? Didn't
I think
this week he had a 97-yard touchdown.
Oh,
and it was on a 60-yard rope from Sam Darnold.
Yeah, no, sorry. That was the prior week. So, yeah, I mean, the Vikings look pretty good. Brian Flores is Brian Flores. So we know that dude's a genius. Like, I mean, you had Brock Purdy go up to the man and say your scheme is crazy. I mean, when does that happen? When is goes up to Brian Flores, says your scheme is crazy. The Packers won with Malik Willis. I don't know how. And then, yeah, we'll get to the Bears.
That was just rough. Rough week for our outside teams that we support, Jeff. Rough.
Well, hold on. Fuck the Bears.
Whoa.
Caleb Williams.
Looked tough, too.
Well,
he hasn't thrown a touchdown pass yet. 2 weeks in.
Let me say this. That O-line is
fair. That's fair. That's actually fair.
But it's honestly like it's a problem. Like, and that's where and you see Bryce Young just got benched. That's another thing. But Caleb, because that dude is just trash. I don't think he's getting to that point where but that O-line is not great. He's under. I mean, you watch the game. Dude's run. This is the problem with Caleb, and he has to adjust to this. Dude is running around. You see him running around like he's back at USC. This ain't, dude. You're gonna get killed.
Trying,
dude. I know he's trying. But yeah, I mean, Keenan Allen was trying to coach him on the sideline. That's why I'm not worried. The Lions are going to win this division. Like, I think they're still favored. I think they're even more favored. Someone tweeted that out. I don't know if you guys saw that.
I did see that. I could be wrong, but I don't think they are, because last week when we did the show Monday and I started the show with the screenshot where I did it, and they were like minus 140 last week. So this week it changed a little bit, because I don't know if you guys remember. I don't know what it's at right now if someone wants to pull it up. But last week, I believe they were first at like minus 140, and the Vikings and the Packers were tied for last, and the Bears were second last week, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, the Lions moved down a little bit. So that was not true. I don't know where that came from. But yeah, they were minus 140. They're now plus 105. The Vikings are plus 280. The Bears were, I believe, in second actually last week. And then the Vikings and Packers were tied for last. And now it goes Vikings plus 280, Packers plus 350, and the Bears plus 700. So it's moved significantly. The one that's interesting, I don't know why the Packers aren't still second. Like the Packers beat the Colts 16-10 with Malik Willis. Like I think that kind of shows there when you do have Jordan Love and whenever he does return, like he didn't get put on IR, which means they think he's coming back in the next 3 weeks.
He'll be back. Yeah.
So like in that sense, like you would think if Malik Willis is just, in my opinion, if he goes 1-2 in that stretch, like you won a game out of that. Like I'm happy, and he's already won one, so he's playing. They're playing with house money now going into the next couple of weeks without Jordan Love. If he doesn't return, so like I think the Packers should still be second. And like that's still me. I'm still a little fearful of the Packers, and I do think like this weekend did show me a little bit. The Vikings are a team you can't mess around with. And like you do have to consider them a little bit to be a problem, because I do like Kevin O'Connell. Shout out to Klotz. Like Kevin O'Connell is a guy who will make sure he's not just a good quarterbacks coach. He is a good head football coach in the NFL. Like he doesn't get enough credit for what he did last year with all those injuries and bringing in these backup quarterbacks and kind of going through all that there in Minnesota. And now this year he's doing what he's doing with Sam Darnold versus the 49ers. I don't care if they don't have CMC and there's injuries. Like going up against Kyle Shanahan and doing that's still impressive. So like they're going to be a problem. And the Bears stuff again, I will just stick with this, and I just keep getting proven right with this until Matt Eberflus is fired. That program's going to be in the dumps. I don't care if you don't have an offensive line. I don't care if you have who you have. Until Matt Eberflus is out of there and you get an offensive line, those are the only two things you need to do. Find yourself an offensive line for your rookie quarterback, which I don't know how you didn't do in the first place. And two, get a new head coach, and then you're going to be perfectly fine.
So, and this is a theory I've heard. I think it's a common thing in the NFL that defensive head coaches can't figure out the O-line. It's just I don't know why, but it's so true. Like Robert Saleh, dude never figured it out till this year.
But isn't it the GM?
Well, yeah, but you know how they work hand in hand. I guess it's like, I guess, but it's weird. It's a weird trend. Like the Chiefs, Andy Reid, remember that Super Bowl? They fixed it in an off season. Like they didn't play any games. And then you have like the Bears with Matt Eberflus. They have not figured it out. Like they draft, and maybe that's Brian Pohl's drafting, but collectively they just haven't.
Bengals, as soon as they had the issue, like instantly that offseason, we're fixing this.
Yeah,
I guess that's a
and then DeMeco Ryans like inherited 2 good tackles. So like that's just so they've been fine in Houston. But it's just how it goes.
I don't think there's a problem though. Like I think the Lions are they're fine.
Yeah,
I'm not even. I like what Kory said. Like, even if they lose this Saturday, it's still like, all right, yeah, there's what's going on. But you're not like, in my opinion, personally, like, even if you go start 1-2, I'm not in panic mode. Like, I'll say it a million times. Like, if we're in December and there's a problem, then I'm gonna state my issues. But like September and October, all right, let's figure this thing out. But it's when you get like if they're sitting there at 2-4, 2-5, you're like, whoa, what's going on? But you got to think like 2 years ago they were 1-6. And they were literally got robbed from the playoffs after they finished 8-2 because of a ref in the Seattle game. Like they started 1-6 with Dan Campbell, and they almost made the wild card game still. So like I'm not gonna sit here and like 1-2. Like obviously the Booner path goes through the 1 seed and all of that. The Booner path is still alive. The Booner path is winning the Super Bowl at the end of the day. Sometimes there's going to be detours. As of right now, the straight line is still going straight to the 1 seed because the 49ers lost. But like the NFC North, it's still your division to win. Like I'm not gonna freak out. Even next week, if something happens bad, I'm not gonna freak out. Hey, what is this? What is it called? What is it like? Tunnel vision. I'm going through a tunnel right now. Head down through the tunnel. The Booner path at the moment, we are driving through a massive tunnel. And we are like week 2 and week 3.
You can see the light at the end of it, though, Boone. You can see the light at the end.
There's a light out there, yeah. And it might be even after next week, but there's just a tunnel. All the outside hate is out. We have a tunnel to the Super Bowl. Blinders, baby.
There you go, Boone.
Hey, well, yeah, I'm with you there. Hey, well, let's get to mailbag. So get your questions. 9:50. So let's go to the chat. You guys got any questions, concerns, conversation? I know a lot of you. People are bickering in the chat, which, is fine. It's sports takes, right? We bicker. Let's keep keep.
I
the
get
people
mad
in
all
the-
the time at people.
Just keep the people. I don't time Boone out when I don't like. I hate what he says. All right, we got to stay in the chat here. So just mute each other if you don't want to see each other. But hey, it is what it is. I mean, it's sports, so we know how that goes, boys. We've screamed at each other plenty of times. So I mean, and we're on camera, so we're not. We're actually. I mean, it gets a little different. Coach Walk Mailbag. We need an update on Amon-Ra St. Brown. We talked about it. Contusion, bruise. I think he'll be all right, Boone. Right? It's
just like a soft tissue thing that Dan said. It's just a Charlie horse, really bad Charlie horse. It'll be good.
It looked worse.
Probably won't. So I think there was the contusion and there was cramping. So like the cramping too. You guys know how the cramping gets. You don't ever know what's going on. So I think it was like both, and it made it that much worse. So I think he's fine. My guess is if you see him on an injury report, like don't freak out. And again, if he misses a week, it's not like a big deal. And they might suck just because you do need to win, but like don't freak out if he misses a week. It might just be that just needs to little massage it.
I'm not gonna make that joke. Tyler Mailbag to sugar rematch Marab and two of him.
Skip it.
Yeah. So Booner,
skip it. He is a bad fighter. No. Bad fighter.
Hey, watch your mouth, Boone.
Hey.
Dude, it is unbelievable to me that you're the best fighter in the world, and I'm a Sugar Sean fan, Sean O'Malley, absolute dog. How are you gonna stand in there and not fight? What are you doing? You're supposed to. Walk out to the song "Superstar." You're supposed to be a superstar, dude. All right, go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry. That made me so mad.
No, Boone. You could tell I gave Boone a parlay. We were locked in a parlay. So
made me so mad.
The last thing that needed to hit on that parlay that Mike and Boone were like, Jeff, you don't have a great record when it comes to this stuff, because I always say UFC is the hardest thing to predict. Even though I have the day, I'm like, this guy should win. Never happens. We had one fight left on that parlay. It was Sugar Sean. And we were like,
how is Marab or whatever this guy's name is? How is he injured with 3 minutes left to fight? And Sean's just like, dude, he's injured. Maybe you should hit him. Like, you can finish this guy. Go. You know what I mean? Like, he was hurt. It's unbelievable. Oh, dude, I cannot wrap my head around this. I'm sorry. We got to move off that. That's unbelievable.
Gonna get Boone angry. Boone over some UFC.
Dude, I was so mad on
today, Boone.
I was so mad Saturday night. I was fuming.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. Ed says, team was going to struggle eventually. It is good that they are struggling before we start divisional play. I have so much faith in this defense. Yeah.
Defense at the end.
Yeah. I'm good at this, Klotz, now. I know how to read this stuff. But yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes it's better to struggle like in the middle of the season, so you kind of get you don't want to struggle. If you struggle early too much, you're out of it completely. So you kind of want to, maybe drop a game, get back into it, maybe drop a game, get back into it, but you don't want to string these couple off in the first 5 games. So yeah, I get your point though. You'd rather struggle early than late.
Do you want a fun stat? Fun stat? Detroit Lions haven't lost back-to-back games since week 8 of 2022.
Oh, don't say that.
I've been hearing it all day, so I
okay.
I'm not the only one. I've seen it on Twitter.
The stat we pump out all week.
I've seen it on Twitter a million times. Yeah. I that's why I'm a little confident. It's because of Dan Campbell, though. Like, Dan Campbell is so good at responding. It's like if something's bad or there's a mistake. That's why I was shocked during the game that he wasn't able to turn things around. But throughout week to week, he is so good at getting the guys back together. He's such a good leader. And being like, this is what we need to fix. This is what we need to do. Let's go out there and execute it next week, because we didn't do it last week. So that's why I'm confident they win Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm with you there. Mike says, everybody love everybody. Come on, people.
ELE, baby.
By the way, Coach, it's not Coach's fault that the whole Anakin thing, because Coach didn't mean to. Like, Coach, he's just hanging out. He wanted to mute someone, so he's good now. So I see people talk about that. I don't know if I don't know how mods work with muting. If you because when I was a mod for our other network, I couldn't mute people. It's weird. So if you can't mute someone, then you just maybe if it's that bad, you just don't be moderator. You can mute the guy. But if you can, just ignore people if you're a moderator. Anyway, let's just move on.
Shout
Jay-Z,
out Mike Reed too, by the way. He was at the
yes,
Red
yeah.
Ox
It was
Tavern.
honestly,
Shout out.
It was nice meeting Mike Reed, man. He's ordered some merch.
Yeah.
He's supporting the channel. Man, it was awesome. Great guy. He's wearing his Rakestraw jersey on. It was sweet. Which that is a player. You don't see too many. Maybe I don't see it, but
He said he got it custom made.
that's sweet. It's badass.
Big time one.
Yeah, it's badass. Yeah, and also, by the way, we're coming out with a new merchandise item, guys. I just thought of it during the show, just popped in my head. We're gonna have a shirt that says, should I say this? Fuck it. It's already being designed. We're gonna have a shirt that says "Run the ball." That's what we're gonna get on the shirt.
Yeah.
Right on the front. I love that.
Run the ball.
Run the
That
ball.
just popped in my. So if you guys want to run the ball crunch time shirt, it'll be on the shop like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's
Sold
go.
it out.
So
Let's go.
we should wear it to the game. Wear it to the game. Run the ball, dude. Fucking.
Can I throw something? I think too. I could be wrong. I mentioned on the live show we were doing Sunday during the game. We are going to do another live stream Sunday. Hopefully, we're at the Red Ox Tavern again, and we're able to kind of figure out all that stuff so the streams go well. We might be doing a ticket giveaway for a Lions game. So, like, keep an eye out for that with Real American Beer. Shout out Real American Beer. Keep an eye out for that. We will definitely just to tease people, and it might be an in-person thing so people could come watch the show live and do that. Just thought of that.
Big shout out, man, Sean Murphy. Hey, Sean, I didn't forget about you. A lot of chaos going on here, so we're trying to get through it. Shout out, Sean. Go watch From Half Court for a Piston season starting soon. So
can't wait.
Yeah, we're gonna have Sean on very soon. He says, why don't they use J-Mo and Amon-Ra more as rushers in the run game? Feel like there's multiple players who can make explosive plays, and our running game felt predictable Sunday. They just had one attempt with J-Mo, and that was about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think part of it is they rely so much on them in the passing game that they probably don't want to use them as much in the run game. I don't know. I mean, I get it. Maybe give J-Mo another rush attempt. I mean, the guy gets like 10 yards a rush, but then you don't want to make him like Debo because like Debo's like
Debo's Debo. That's where people like use him like Debo. Like Debo is Debo. Like TJ Watt is TJ Watt. There's some players that are just themselves. Like there's not one NFL wide receiver that's in the league right now that can do what Debo Samuel does. The way that Debo is built and the way that Debo plays is a style that is just unique to him. So if you expect Jameson Williams to go and have a Debo Samuel type impact of a game, you're leveling him up for injury because even Debo himself is an injury riddled player. You have Jahmyr Gibbs, you have David Montgomery, you have all the weapons that you need out of the backfield. So I'm very like high on Jameson Williams getting a handoff every game. It doesn't even have to be every game, but keep him in the run game. Same thing with if you want to give it to Amon-Ra St. Brown just to keep the defense honest and on their toes. But when you have the running backs that you do, there's no reason to kind of push the envelope with Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown out of the backfield just because of injury. Like the Debo thing is just Debos do not fall out of a tree. Like NFL teams have been trying to find the next Debo Samuel, and there has not been one yet for a reason. It's because Debo is Debo.
Yeah, I do think I will say this though, like with the J-Mo stuff, they do need to find ways because that last year there were more times where they found ways to get him in the run game, whether it was like a jet sweep or something or kind of a reverse. One time in a game might not be enough. Maybe you need to find a way 2 or 3 times to get J-Mo in the open field and coming downhill out of running the ball instead of just kind of hoping that he's open down. But like I do think maybe there's that sense with kind of the Debo style. With Amon-Ra, that's a questionable one. There were times last year, it was weird. They had him lined up in the backfield, which there is those time clots. I'm with you a little bit. The injury, like, do you want to get, have more contact on Amon-Ra? Probably not. Try and limit it. But I don't know how many times he's actually rushed the ball out of the backfield, though. But the J-Mo thing, I will say, like last year, that worked a lot. And I said it a lot on the stream. When you do get J-Mo on those end arounds, it's essentially, even if they know it's coming, it feels like it's 10 yards minimum automatically at a time just because of his speed. So trying to find more times throughout a game, maybe once a half or 2 or 3 times a game, I think that's fair. Like I think it's fair to ask for that.
So burning issues mailbag after the first 2 games of the season for all 32. Have your top 10 rankings changed? You'll find out tomorrow. Top 10 Tuesday.
Yeah.
Can't wait. I'm interested to see.
Colts in my top 10.
I want to see.
If you do, I will.
I want to see this fucking guy's list. All right, I want to see this guy's list. Yeah, I want to see if you put them Lions. I'm trying to see if you crack. That's what I want to see tomorrow.
I've already know what I'm doing. I decided 24 hours ago what I'm doing.
I want to
with
see
my
if you
list.
crack. I want to see. You're gonna be like the Randy Marsh meme of the "I got one more in me." Like that's gonna be you
ain't giving up.
Lions at one. I love it. Tune in tomorrow. You'll see our top 10 list. Appreciate everyone for tuning in, man. Even Monday Night Football, you guys are awesome.
Yeah, shout out to people real quick too. I just want to throw this out there. This is unbelievable. The Detroit Tigers, because earlier in the night I was checking out the score and they were losing and the Twins were winning, and in my head I'm like, man, that's tough. Like, not good. They're 2.5 games back. The Guardians came back and beat the Twins tonight 4-3, and the Tigers have come back on the Kansas City Royals and they're up 7-6 in the 7th inning. So things could be happening tonight, and we could all go to sleep here. If the Tigers win. Tigers are only 1.5 games out of the playoffs, out of the postseason. Now, mind you, they don't have the tiebreaker, so it'll technically be 2.5 games. But still, that is unbelievable. They have a chance to be 2.5 games out of a wild card spot with like 15 games to play. Postseason baseball in Detroit would be unbelievable. That would be nuts,
dude. I mean,
it's like realistic.
We're there. You're right there. You're in the
Crazy.
Mix. In the mix, dude. And we'll be covering here in crunch time. We got to reach out to Raj, man. Get him on here.
We do.
Shout out to Raj. He's doing a great job, man. He's my guy for all Tiger stuff. I don't give a shit. Raj is the GOAT. We'll catch you guys tomorrow. Be there 8 p.m., 10 p.m.
Be square.
Or be square, as Booner would say. Appreciate you guys. Get your merchandise. We'll come out with the Run the Ball merch tomorrow. That's going to be sweet. And get your Bully Montgomery shirt or hoodie. We have both up live on the store. I just put up the hoodie a couple days ago. So hoodie's live. But we'll catch you guys. Have a great one. Stay blessed.
See you guys. Love you guys.
And be nice to each other.